Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of the Watts family. Shanann Watts, 34, and her husband, Christopher, 33, have two daughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3. Both are from North Carolina and met on Facebook. Initially, she did not accept her proposal. When Shanann faced difficulties in her life, Christopher supported her, and their relationship began to grow rapidly from that point. They relocated to Frederick, Colorado, where they got married on November 3, 2012, and decided to start a family despite facing challenges. At that time, Shanann was informed that she might not be able to have children due to her lupus diagnosis, an autoimmune disease. Nevertheless, Christopher reassured her of his unwavering support and encouraged her to accept his marriage proposal. Despite her health issues, Shanann joyfully became a mother and gave birth to two beloved daughters, whom she described as amazing and spirited. Shanann then discovered she was pregnant with a baby boy. This news filled her with excitement, knowing how Christopher had always dreamed of having a son. She was thrilled to fulfill his wish and expand their family, and her daughters were also excited about welcoming a new sibling. They even chose a name for the baby, Nico. Shanann was very active on social media, frequently posting updates about her life on Instagram. She shared videos about herself and her children, showcasing family moments, and engaging with various online communities. To outsiders, it appeared that the family led a perfect life. Christopher worked for a large oil and natural gas company, while Shanann previously worked in human resources at a children's hospital. However, her husband's income was not sufficient to cover their living expenses and the mortgage on their large 5-bedroom home with a 3-car garage. As a result, they filed for bankruptcy in 2015 due to high mortgage payments, health insurance costs, and medical expenses. Soon after, Shanann started a new job at an online supplement company. She loved the job because it offered many benefits. She could spend all day with her children and have quality time with them, while also having the opportunity to travel for work with a high salary, which suited her very well. On June 16, 2018, she shared a heartfelt post on social media about her life, expressing her happiness and satisfaction with her new job. In her post, she mentioned that she loved the lifestyle that allowed her to live fully and cherish every moment with her family. Shanann often expressed her happiness and painted a picture of a thriving, successful, and friendly family on social media. During a live session, she mentioned that she had many upcoming plans and trips. From June 22 to 26, she was scheduled to travel to San Diego with Christopher. After that trip, she planned to take their daughters to North Carolina to visit relatives, returning home on August 7. She was also looking forward to a short business trip for work that would last just a couple of nights. She shared her plans and cheerful posts on social media. After attending a seminar in Arizona, she returned home on August 13, 2018. Her close friend, Nicola Toft Atkinson, picked her up from the airport and dropped her off around 2 a.m. This was the last time anyone saw Shanann alive. A friend later noted that Shanann appeared very tired and exhausted, as if she hadn't been sleeping well, but she seemed determined. It looked like she was preparing for something at home, where her husband Christopher and their two daughters were waiting for her. On August 13, Shanann had an appointment for a checkup regarding her third pregnancy, which was in its 15th week. The doctor's visit was necessary to ensure that everything was progressing normally. However, when she failed to arrive for her 10 a.m. appointment and missed a business meeting, her friend Nicole became concerned. Nicole found it unusual that Shanann wasn't answering her phone or responding to text messages, especially since Shanann typically took her communication seriously because of her job and her responsibilities as a mother. Worried about Shanann, Nicole tried to call her throughout the day. When that didn't work, Nicole decided to check on her at her house. Upon arriving, Nicole noticed her car in the driveway and knocked on the door, but no one responded. Next, Nicole called her husband, Christopher, who was at work, and then contacted the police. The police arrived at 1:40 p.m. and attempted to get a response by knocking on the door, but when that failed, the officer contacted Christopher and suggested he come to help check the house. When Christopher arrived, he entered the house with a police officer. They found Shanann's mobile phone on the sofa, between the pillows, while in the kitchen, her handbag, wallet, and keys were located. A suitcase filled with belongings was near the stairs. All of Shanann's personal items, including her daughter's medicine, were inside the house, indicating that she had not left. Her car was parked as usual, and the child's seats were still in place. Only Shanann and her daughters, Bella and Celeste, were the ones missing. In missing persons investigations, authorities typically start by questioning the partner or spouse of the missing individual, asking if they have noticed anything unusual, have any information, when they last saw them, or if there was any conflict. This case followed the same protocol, and Christopher was asked such questions. He informed the police that Shanann returned home around 2 a.m., and during an emotional conversation, he told her he wanted a divorce. Both were upset and crying. Afterwards, he went to work. He never saw Shanann again. Surveillance footage from a nearby house confirmed that he left at 5:15 a.m., and no one else exited the house after that, prompting the police to call in a detective. Christopher informed the detective that the timeline of the incident began when Shanann returned home at 1:48 a.m. They had a conversation at 4 a.m., and he left for work at 5:15 a.m. Initially, he claimed that he and his wife had an emotional discussion upon her arrival, which was a minor inconsistency in his story. Over the next 2 days, Christopher gave several interviews to the media about the disappearance of his wife and children, trying to present himself as a genuinely worried father. He stated that his children were his life and that their smiles lit up his world, expressing his sorrow over their absence. That image, however, didn't last long. On August 15, 2018, Christopher was arrested on 3 counts of first-degree murder. He had previously failed a lie detector test, and during a later interrogation, he confessed to killing his wife, but denied any involvement in their daughter's death. Investigators also examined the neighbor's video footage, which showed Christopher loading a large, heavy object wrapped in a sheet into his car at 5:30 a.m. on August 13. Notably, there was no video evidence of Shanann leaving the house. This lack of footage led the police to conclude that Christopher was loading the bodies of Shanann and their daughters into the vehicle. Before he fully confessed, he requested to see his father. When his father entered the interrogation room, he shared his account of the incident, shocking everyone present, as no one anticipated what he would say. Christopher shared that he and Shanann had a deeply emotional conversation in which he acknowledged their marriage was failing. Just before leaving for work, he glanced at the baby monitor and saw Shanann attempting to strangle their daughter Celeste by the crib. He immediately rushed to the room and found Bella bruised and, unfortunately, dead. Witnessing Shanann harm their children drove Christopher into a fury, and in a fit of rage, he strangled his wife in a similar manner. Christopher mentioned that after discussing divorce, Shanann threatened that he would never see their daughters again, seemingly indicating she was about to act on her intentions. Following his confession, Christopher revealed to the authorities where he had hidden the bodies, guiding them to the site near his workplace, where oil tanks were located. Shanann was buried in a shallow grave about 40 miles from their home, while their daughter was placed in the oil tanks, submerged in crude oil. He explained that the tragedy arose because he and his wife had drifted apart, focusing on their children but neglecting their relationship. However, a significant detail later emerged that changed the narrative. Christopher had been having an affair with a woman named Nicole Kessinger, which began while Shanann and their daughter were visiting relatives in North Carolina. Nicole was a contractor at Christopher's workplace, where they met and quickly entered into a relationship. He told her that he and Shanann had mutually agreed to divorce and mentioned that they had 2 daughters, but he did not disclose that Shanann was pregnant with their 3rd child. Later, Nicole mentioned that if she had known about the pregnancy, she would never have spent time with Christopher. Although their relationship was new, it progressed quickly, and Nicole was already planning to marry him. The day before Shanann and her daughter went missing, Nicole had been shopping for a wedding dress. When Shanann and the kids' disappearance captured public attention, Nicole went to the police to disclose her affair with Christopher. She revealed that she had visited Christopher's family home twice at the beginning of their relationship, but her visits were brief. Nicole also believed that financial issues were a motive behind Christopher's actions. She recounted that on the night Shanann was reported missing, she called Christopher and found him in bed, getting ready to sleep. He claimed that his wife was missing, likely because she intended to leave him and take the kids with her. Nicole found it odd that he could sleep calmly under such circumstances. Realizing something was definitely amiss, Nicole decided to inform the police and cooperated fully with their investigation. The authorities suspected Nicole's involvement in the murders, but they lacked evidence to support their claims. It later emerged that Christopher and Shanann had experienced disagreements and emotional distance in recent months, leading Shanann to take an extended vacation with their children to reflect and give her husband space to think. However, despite her cheerful social media posts, her messages to Christopher revealed that their relationship was strained. On August 5, 2018, Shanann wrote to Christopher that she was trying to give him space, but while he was working, he was living like a bachelor. She mentioned that she was at home with their third child, managing their two other kids every day, working, and trying to earn money. She said it was hard for him to even send a text saying that he loved her and missed her, and she kept checking her phone, hoping to hear from him. In her letter, she expressed her disbelief that it had been 8 years since they started dating and mentioned that they now had 3 kids. She indicated that they needed to talk. The letter conveyed her feelings of missing him and loving him, emphasizing the importance of working on their marriage. However, she also mentioned that if their feelings for each other didn't align, it would be necessary to discuss it. Shanann remarked that she couldn't understand how someone could fall out of love during the 5 weeks she had been away. Christopher stated that he loved Shanann and was with her not just for the children, but he struggled to understand his own feelings. Shanann later confided in a friend that their relationship had faced many challenges and that they had become incompatible, particularly because Christopher refused to attend couples counseling. During the investigation, prosecutors realized that Christopher desired a new romantic relationship and a fresh start, wanting to escape the burdens of family life and the tensions in his marriage. He was even looking for a new apartment with Nicole. After committing the crime, Christopher was not only focused on finding a new apartment but also hurriedly listed his house for sale. On August 21, 2018, Christopher was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts related to the murder of a child under 12, 1 count of illegal termination of pregnancy, and 3 counts of abuse of a corpse. To avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty to all charges in 2018. On November 19, he was sentenced to 5 life terms without the possibility of parole, receiving an additional 48 years for illegal termination of pregnancy and 36 years for abuse of a corpse. 2 months after the verdict was announced, Christopher disclosed the truth about the incident. He explained that he had not loved Shanann for a long time but was afraid to leave her because he thought she would take their daughters. He met Nicole at work and was the first to approach her, claiming that he was already in the process of divorcing his wife and did not wear a wedding ring. During an argument, Christopher strangled Shanann in their bedroom. The autopsy indicated that she had suffered for a while, suggesting that she had tried to fight back. At that moment, their older daughter, Bella, walked in and asked what was happening. Christopher told her that her mother was sick and needed to rest. He then wrapped Shanann's body in a sheet and carried it to the car. When their daughter began to cry, scared and confused, Christopher lost control and strangled both of them, Celeste with her own blanket and Bella with his hands. He heard Bella's last words, "Dad, no," as she fought for her life. Christopher then disposed of the bodies by taking them to the oil site where he worked, burying Shanann and throwing his daughter's bodies into oil tanks. After the verdict, Christopher Watts was sent to state prison but was later transferred for safety reasons to a maximum security facility in Wisconsin, where he will spend the rest of his life. The judge who sentenced Christopher described the murders as some of the most inhumane and cruel acts that he had ever encountered in his career. Shanann's father labeled Christopher a heartless monster and expressed a wish that the souls of his daughters haunt Christopher at night. He emphasized that Christopher deserves to suffer. Hey detectives, welcome back. we've got another mysterious case to explore, the case of Kara Nichols. Kara Nichols, born on May 20, 1993, was the middle child in her family. She grew up with her brother Terrence and younger sister, living in a very united and loving family. Sociable and friendly, Kara thrived in school and had a strong passion for art, particularly painting. Her talent has won her many awards in art competitions. At the same time, she is also considered to have a promising future. She is also very empathetic, often understanding and feeling other people's pain as her own. During her teenage years, Kara's behavior changed a lot. She became introverted, and her academic performance dropped. At the age of 13, she was arrested for shoplifting and sentenced to community service. Her parents, Julia and Paul, were confused by this sudden change in their daughter. She never lacked for anything, so her stealing may have been her way of rebelling against established norms. At 16, Kara's mental health deteriorated after the death of her beloved dog, plunging her into a deep depression. Her parents arranged for her to see a psychologist, but the sessions were ineffective, and her condition worsened. Eventually, she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, where she was diagnosed with a personality disorder. After a short period of treatment, her condition improved with prescribed medication. However, due to the many side effects of the medication, she decided to stop taking it and turned to illegal substances, believing they would be a better alternative to antipsychotics. Before graduating, she had to transfer schools several times because of behavioral problems. After graduating from high school, Kara worked as a waitress, while also pursuing her childhood dream of becoming a model. With her attractive appearance, she believes that she will succeed in this field. She has been working hard to find modeling agencies and increase her body of work. During this time, her health improved greatly, and she was no longer addicted. However, over time, she came to understand that success in modeling required more than just beauty. It also depended on luck and connections. In the summer of 2012, Kara's family relocated to Chicago, Illinois. Unfortunately, the move was difficult for she, and her depression returned. Stress caused her to turn to drugs again, despite her parents' best efforts to support her and take her to a rehab facility. In the end, she was kicked out of there for not following the rules. Her parents were worried, not only because of her behavior, but also because of how she was funding her addiction. Her salary as a waitress was not enough to cover these expenses. Kara's parents felt disheartened. Her mental state changed from day to day. After some brief conversations, she decided to move back to her hometown, believing that being in familiar surroundings and reconnecting with old friends would help her recover. Although her family disliked the idea, they couldn't persuade her to stay. Eventually, she returned to Colorado Springs, and her brother Terrence promised to help her. The care and affection the two siblings showed each other comforted their parents. However, Kara valued her liberty and chose not to live with Terrence, visiting him only occasionally. Instead, she decided to rent an apartment with 3 male friends, which shocked her parents when they found out. They insisted she move out, but she refused, explaining that she had no better options and felt the men were no danger. Gradually, life returned to normal for Kara. She resumed her previous job and continued her modeling career by creating a profile on Model Mayhem. Over time, she received more modeling offers, but they didn't produce the results she had hoped for. Standing out among thousands of profiles proved is big challenge. Eventually, Kara encountered financial difficulties. She fell behind on her rent and had to eat food from his roommate. She confided in her brother, Terrence, who provided her with financial support. She was determined to seize the opportunity she received on October 9. However, no one expected that night to be her last. At the time of her disappearance, Kara was 19 years old. She was last seen wearing a hooded sweatshirt, dark jeans, white DC sneakers, and pink headphones. Kara is a girl with outstanding height, with green eyes, and has 2 tattoos, a marijuana leaf on her right ankle and an astronaut on her left wrist. She also had multiple piercings on her ears and above her lip. Flyers distributed in the area described these features, along with other details about her appearance. It was also noted that she struggled with bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder. Her older brother, Terrence, was the first to suspect that something was wrong. Soon after, her parents, Julia and Paul Nichols, joined the search for their daughter. Although Kara used banned substances, but her family knew she always stayed in touch and kept them updated about her whereabouts. When she failed to call back on October 10 and 11, her family became increasingly concerned. They always cared for her, but she wanted to live freely and did not want to follow any constraints. Lately, she has become more withdrawn and only talks to her brother Terrence. Kara's modeling job did not bring in the expected income, so when she was offered a well-paying lingerie photo shoot, she eagerly accepted. She told her roommates about her plans and left late at night. The shoot was scheduled for early morning in Denver, so it was more convenient to leave the night before. She wasn't traveling alone, she was accompanied by colleagues from the industry. Since neither she nor her friends had a driver's license or a car, they managed to find someone to drive them. At first, Kara's story didn't raise any suspicions. People who know her often see her modeling profile and social networks filled with professional photos. Everything seemed normal until she failed to return the next day or the day after. The last time her brother, Terrence, spoke to her was at 11:45 p.m. on October 9. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted, and she did not call back. Terrence thought the phone was disconnected and went to sleep, not knowing that he would never hear his sister's voice again. As of October 10, Kara did not respond to any calls or messages. Her voicemail was consistently active. Terrence assumed she was either busy or resting after work. However, by October 11, there was still no word from her. This strange silence made him extremely worried, because it was not like Kara was always out of contact. Worried, Terrence decided to visit Kara's home and spoke with her neighbors. None of them had seen she in several days. One young man mentioned seeing her get into a dark-colored sedan around 11:00 p.m. Unfortunately, he couldn't identify the driver due to the darkness, but noted that she didn't seem to be alone. Terrence then went into Kara's room to look for clues. He noticed that her essential belongings, such as her cosmetics bag, purse, charger, and laptop, were still there. On the bedside table, he even found $300 in cash. It was clear she hadn't planned to leave for an extended period. When he opened her laptop, he discovered that she hadn't been online for more than 2 days. This was unusual, as she was often checking her email for modeling opportunities. Convinced that something was wrong, he reported her disappearance to the police. At the police station, Terrence explained everything in detail, but the police were in no hurry to begin the search. They argued that Kara was an adult and didn't have to inform anyone of her whereabouts. They suggested she might have been held up at a photo shoot, gone somewhere else, or possibly had a boyfriend no one knew about and was spending time with him. However, the police's explanation still did not reassure Terrence. He knew his sister well. No matter what happens, she will definitely contact him. He was certain something bad had happened to her. However, the police calmed him down and asked him to come back later. Terrence then contacted their parents. He explained the situation and asked for their help. He understood that in a situation as serious as this, there needs to be joint cooperation. Upon learning of their daughter's disappearance, the family quickly flew to Colorado Springs. When they received the news that their daughter was missing, Kara's family quickly flew to Colorado Springs. Her cell phone was still off, and she had missed an important appointment, which made they even more worried. They then went to the police station to ask the police to carefully review the report they had filed. The El Paso County Sheriff's Office eventually recognized that the circumstances surrounding her disappearance were concerning. Detectives contacted locals to find out information about Kara's whereabouts. Kara's parents permitted investigators to access her cell phone data. experts confirmed that her last message was sent to her brother, Terrence. Data from her cellular provider indicated that on October 9th, her phone was traveling north before it was turned off. Friends and acquaintances joined the search, distributing flyers across Colorado Springs and Denver. Investigators also looked into other communication methods used by Kara, particularly her laptop. This leads to the discovery of a secret she has kept from her family. Some of her modeling jobs are actually a cover for a call girl service she has been involved in since she was 17. This shocked her parents, Paul and Julia, when they learned the truth about her income. Unfortunately, they needed to agree to release this information to generate new leads, but doing so could negatively impact the investigation and reduce public interest. There were many cases where the victim's image was significantly distorted, and Kara's family did not want to share their hardships. However, they felt they had no choice but to hope to find she. Unfortunately, no miracle happened. After the new information was released, media outlets began canceling interviews with her family, leading to a decrease in coverage of her disappearance. The search for Kara was suspended. The National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation was the only organization involved in assisting with the investigation into Kara's disappearance. They helped keep her case front of mind for the public and the authorities. In November 2012, detectives announced that they would interview 2 women who were believed to have been in the car with Kara on the night she disappeared. Descriptions of these women suggested they might have worked in the same field as Kara. While they were important witnesses, they were not considered suspects, as they were likely the last people to see her alive. A composite sketch of one of the women was released to the public, but no one came forward with information. This made people doubt the existence of these women, and the investigation was stalled again. That month, Kara's photos appeared on a call girl service website in Las Vegas. However, detectives confirmed that she had not posted them herself. Someone had exploited her fame for personal gain, and the profile was eventually taken down. Although some people interested in the case contacted the police station, after investigation, these reports were confirmed to be false. In the spring of 2013, a businessman from Colorado Springs claimed to have seen Kara between late October and December 2012 with a tall, disheveled man. She looked frightened, suggesting she was being held against her will. One day, this man pushed her, and a bystander intervened, threatening him and asked him to leave her alone. The witness's account was verified. Although police found the man described, but he said the woman with him was actually his ex-girlfriend. In the summer of 2013, a criminal law student took it upon himself to investigate Kara's case. He traveled to Denver, spoke with many homeless individuals and substance users. Several people reported meeting Kara at a nonprofit that provides syringes and needles to drug users. However, this lead turned out to be false, as did all the other testimonies he received. Many people have lost faith in Kara being found alive, because she has been missing for longer than the usual disappearances. In the fall of 2013, Kara's parents have offered a reward to anyone who provides information about their daughter's whereabouts, to no avail. They ruled out a ransom kidnapping as no demands were received. However, the following year, a new development occurred, providing a major breakthrough and reigniting the investigation. In May 2014, Deputy Sheriff Cliff Porter admitted that he had mishandled the investigation into Kara's disappearance. He admitted that he had not focused enough on her case and had overlooked important evidence from the beginning. This admission shocked her family, who felt that their daughter's case had been neglected because of her profession. The mishandling of cell phone records has raised concerns about the conduct of the investigating agency. The administration has been criticized for inaction. Multiple audits have led to disciplinary action against the department, and several individuals have been fired. In May 2016, former Sheriff Terry Makita and some of his staff were charged with corruption, fabricating witness statements, kidnapping, and extortion. This led Kara's family to believe that her case had not been properly handled, However, this situation has led to the opening of a new investigation, especially when new detectives are involved. On February 1, 2022, Christina Hollendorfer went to the police station. Before that, detectives had tried to talk to her several times, but she refused to cooperate. It turned out that since 2014, she had not wanted to testify against her ex-husband, Joel. However, after many years, she decided to speak up and accuse him of killing Kara Nichols. An analysis of Kara's calls and messages showed that she received 8 calls between 9:58 and 11:08 p.m. on October 9, most of which were from Joel. Detectives had questioned him several times, but they only received general information. He admitted that he had hired a call girl and had planned to meet her between the evening of October 9th and the morning of October 10, but the meeting never happened as the escort did not arrive. Joel's statement raised suspicions, especially since data from Kara's phone indicated that she was near his parents' house on the night she disappeared. On October 15, 2014, detectives searched Joel's home and his family's property. During the search, they spoke with Joel and his mother, Betty. They seemed calm and friendly, and it did not appear that they were hiding anything. They willingly showed the detectives around the property, including several fresh burial sites for deceased animals. Joel's family has owned the farm since 1985, which includes a large livestock yard. Dogs trained to detect human remains searched the area and reacted near some livestock graves. However, further investigation of these graves found no evidence of human remains. It's possible the dogs mistook the scent of dead animals for that of a human. To rule Joel out as a suspect, samples from several suspicious areas were collected and analyzed. Unfortunately, the results indicated that the samples were not connected to the case. Despite this, suspicions about Joel remained. As it turns out, Joel has a history of serious harassment and has violated his probation multiple times. He was a hardened criminal who consistently broke the terms of his parole and used banned substances. This led to the breakup of his family. Investigators approached his ex-wife, Christina, multiple times. During these discussions, they revealed that she and he were raising 2 children together. Initially, she was hesitant to share details about their life and eventually stopped communicating altogether. As a result, Joel remained the sole suspect in Kara's disappearance, along with other theories. After 8 years, new information about Joel has come to light. Christina claimed that in November 2014, he had confessed to her that he had accidentally killed a call girl and buried her body in an old horse grave. She learned of this confession after his father's death. Following the funeral, he revealed that he felt guilty about his father's passing. According to Christina, he confessed to his parents what he had done. After hearing this, his father, who was old, fell into a severe depression. This condition severely weakened his father's health and eventually led to his death. During that time, his family covered for him. This behavior explained the hospitality and cooperation shown by Betty and Joel during the search of the farm, as they sought to avoid raising further suspicion. On February 3, 2022, authorities conducted another search at Joel's home. They thoroughly excavated the farm and discovered human remains buried in a 2-meter deep pit. 4 days later, he was arrested. Subsequent analysis confirmed that the remains belonged to Kara, who had been missing. Although only bones were found, modern technology allowed for her identification. During questioning, Joel initially remained composed, but eventually confessed that he had not intended to kill Kara. He said he met her through a call girl website. On October 9th, he called her and arranged to meet, then picked her up from her home. They had some intimate moments in his old car, and everything was going smoothly until he suddenly strangled her. When he realized she had lost consciousness, he stopped. He attempted to perform first aid, but it was too late. She was already dead. Panicked, he drove her to his family farm and buried her in the first grave he found. Over time, he moved her body several times and ultimately buried her where his mother's favorite horse was laid to rest. This explains why service dogs get confused about scents. Additionally, this specific area had not been searched during the initial investigation. Joel Hollendorfer was soon charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Meanwhile, his mother, Betty, claimed she had no knowledge of her son's crime, insisting that she had always cooperated with the investigation and truly believed in his innocence. The hearings occurred in the summer of 2023. The prosecution argued that Joel deliberately committed the crime to fulfill his dark fantasies. Meanwhile, forensic experts were unable to provide a clear explanation for Kara's death. However, they determined that asphyxiation was the cause, based on the fact that her hyoid bone was broken. Experts stated that it is impossible to accidentally strangle someone to death, as there is always time to reconsider and stop. Another important factor was Kara's condition related to drug use. The defense claimed that her death resulted from asphyxiation. They argued that a healthy person would have a much better chance of recovery in similar circumstances than someone dependent on substances. The trial described Kara as a severe addict, suggesting she had little chance of survival due to the long-term effects of the drugs on her body. Unfortunately, the defense's claims cannot be verified or denied at this time. Kara's family was deeply distressed by the way their daughter was depicted. Her father said this description made the jury lose sympathy and view her as a victim who did not deserve mercy. Throughout the trial, Joel did not show remorse, and some witnesses noted that he even smiled at times. In the end, Joel's charges were downgraded to second-degree murder. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 24 years in prison. This sentence did not satisfy Kara's family, who had hoped for a life sentence for Joel. Additionally, due to a lack of evidence, no other individuals were held accountable. Kara's parents said the verdict was a serious failure of the justice system. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Roni Reuter. On the morning of Thursday, October 4, 2007, neighbors of Roni heard heart-wrenching screams and loud bangs coming from her apartment. Alarmed, they called 911 and requested authorities to investigate. The police arrived immediately, and when no one came to open the door, they forced their way inside. In the kitchen, they found a woman lying face down, wearing body armor, with wounds to her head, arms, and pregnant belly. It appeared she had tried to shield her unborn child by covering her stomach with her hands, causing both her hands and stomach to be injured. There were 2 wounds to her abdomen, indicating that the baby was the main target of the attack. The attacker then inflicted injuries to the back of her head. Tragically, both she and her unborn child were dead. The brutality of the crime left the police deeply shaken, questioning who could commit such a horrific act against a pregnant woman. A forensic investigation uncovered a spent 9mm cartridge case and 5 unused cartridges near the body. There were no signs of forced entry, robbery, or sexual assault, ruling out a random attack or burglary. This led investigators to believe the murder was personal and premeditated. It seems that Roni has a dangerous enemy who has harmed her. Police theorize that the attacker attacked Roni as she was preparing to leave the apartment to go to work, ambushing her when she opened the door. Detectives interviewed her neighbors, hoping to find witnesses or valuable leads. The neighbors reported hearing sounds resembling gunshots, leading authorities to suspect the killer used a silenced weapon. A neighbor reported seeing a skinny African-American teenager wearing a hooded sweatshirt, walking up the stairs to Roni's door at around 7:00 a.m., shortly before the incident. Later, another neighbor saw this person running out of the house, get into a small black car, and drive away from the parking lot. Police reviewed surveillance footage from cameras near the house. The footage captured a black car, likely a Volkswagen, arriving at 7:04 a.m. and leaving at 7:55 a.m., aligning with the time frame of the murder. However, the driver of the car has not yet been identified. Inside Roni's purse, investigators discovered a mysterious letter. The letter referenced Sean, the father of her unborn child, and claimed to have uncovered details about him. It alleged that Sean had romantic relationships with women from various countries, listing the names and phone numbers of 16 women he had affairs with. The letter also mentioned Roni's pregnancy, stating that Sean did not want the baby. Detectives suspected the murder was linked to Roni's pregnancy and believed Sean might have crucial information. The teenager seen near the house became the primary suspect, and both he and the black car were placed on a wanted list. Meanwhile, investigators began looking into Roni's social relationship to determine if she had any enemies. She was born in the small town of Potosi, Wisconsin. She met Sean at a charity event in Wisconsin, and the two quickly fell in love. After completing college, she moved to Deerfield, Illinois, a wealthy Chicago suburb with a population of 20,000. At the time of the murder, Roni was 42 years old, lived alone in her condominium. She was 7 months pregnant, eagerly preparing for the arrival of her first child, a baby girl she planned to name Skylar. The father of her child was Sean, 45, her partner of 17 years. Despite dating for many years, they did not marry or live together. Sean, a former Chicago Bears football player, was questioned by detectives for 10 hours. He shared how much he loved Roni and was looking forward to their child's birth. Roni deeply loved him, but Sean's feelings were more complex. He admitted to detectives that he had multiple affairs, which strained their relationship. He said that Roni knew about his infidelity, and it had caused her to grow distant from him. Despite this, he insisted he was excited to become a father. He appeared heartbroken over the tragic deaths of Roni and their unborn baby, and his emotions seemed genuine. Additionally, his strong, athletic build did not match the description of the thin teenager a neighbor claimed to have seen. Sean told the police that he had overslept that morning, he waking up at 9:15 a.m. and then went to a barbershop for a haircut. This alibi was confirmed by the barbershop administrator. However, the barbershop was close to Roni's house, just a 10-minute walk from her home, which made the detectives suspicious. They considered the possibility that Sean might have killed Roni or orchestrated the crime by hiring someone else. Despite his alibi, investigators did not eliminate him as a suspect and continued looking into his potential involvement. They questioned Sean's friends to evaluate whether he was capable of murder, his relationship with Roni, and whether he truly wanted the child. Sean's close friends have strenuously denied that he committed the crime, insisting that he was delighted to be a father, despite his relationships with other women. When detectives visited Sean's home for a follow-up interview, they discovered parenting books and baby items, indicating that he was preparing for fatherhood. During the interview, police asked who he thought might be responsible for the crime. He listed 16 women he had recently been involved with, and emphasized one name in particular, Monika Kurowska. Sean said that Monika, a fitness model from Poland, was someone he had dated while living in Europe. Their relationship ended a year ago, but Monika couldn't accept the breakup and began stalking him. She traveled to the United States and started following him. One night, she came to his apartment complex, ringing all the doors, including those of his neighbors and his own. When he stepped outside, he discovered a broken window and noticed Monika had blood on her hand. He found her behavior very worrying and dangerous, so he took out a restraining order against her. Sean suspects that Monika is the one who sent letters to Roni and his other lovers. These letters caused conflict between him and Roni. He suspects Monika because she follows him and knows all his secrets. In addition, the letters contain common errors in people who are just learning to speak English, like Monika. Even his mother received such a letter. Detectives became interested in Monica and eventually located her. During questioning, Monica denied any involvement in Roney's death, claiming she had an alibi. She was at work on the morning of the murder. The police confirmed her alibi. Monica shared a slightly different account of events. She admitted traveling to the USA to see Sean, hoping to win him back. Upon arriving at his home, she discovered him with another woman. In a fit of anger, she knocked hard on the window and accidentally broke it. Following this incident, she ended her relationship with Sean and claimed it was the last time she saw him. She also denied sending letters to Roney or Sean's mother, but the police remained skeptical of her story and continued to view her as a suspect. Despite their efforts, the investigation stalled. They suspect both Sean and Monica, as each had a motive to harm Roney, but both had alibis. No other suspects emerged. Then, the case took an unexpected turn. Police continued to question all of Roney and Sean's relatives. During the investigation, an acquaintance of theirs expressed suspicions about Marnie Yang, who was said to be obsessed with Sean. Investigators learned that Marnie had been in a relationship with Sean. The two had met 6 years earlier at a Chicago Bears convention, and Sean later reached out to her for help with real estate. Marnie, a realtor, had facilitated several real estate transactions for him. Marnie, single mother of 3 children, worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, including as a realtor, a waitress, and even photographer. Over time, she grew close to Sean, and their relationship continued up until Roney's murder. It was later revealed that they had slept together the day before the crime. This led investigators to scrutinize Marnie more closely. After speaking with her family and friends, they concluded that Marnie was obsessed with Sean. She viewed him as her possession and wouldn't leave him alone. When she discovered he had other relationships, she became furious. Her jealousy drove her to want he all to herself, believing he should belong only to her. She calls him her boyfriend, despite the fact that their relationship was short and fleeting. Detectives questioned Marnie, but she firmly denied any involvement in the crime. Despite this, she was unable to provide an alibi for the time of the murder. She claimed she was at home with her children, but the lack of evidence to support this made her the primary suspect. Detectives believe Marnie fits the description of the person they are looking for. With her petite build, she could easily be mistaken for a teenager if she was wearing a sweatshirt and hood. After obtaining a search warrant for the home, police discovered several important clues. Upon examining Marnie's computer, they discovered she had access to Sean's email and had been secretly monitoring his messages. Among the emails, they found letters from Monica to Sean written in broken English. Marnie had mimicked Monica's writing style, including the grammatical errors. She sent anonymous letters to several women involved in Sean's life, such as Roney and his mother. These letters contained accusations about Sean's relationships, and investigators concluded that her intention was to frame Monica as the main suspect. However, her plan ultimately failed. The police discovered a broken computer hard drive and several bank statements in Marnie's trash. The bank statements showed that she had hired a private investigator to collect detailed information about all the women in Sean's life, including their full names and addresses. Inside Marnie's apartment, investigators found postal receipts with the addresses of Roney and several other women who had received anonymous letters. It also came to light that Marnie owned a gun. In September 2005, she was stopped at the airport for purchasing and transporting 2 pistols and 200 rounds of ammunition. Although she provided the required paperwork, the weapons were declared and shipped to Chicago. Marnie's former lover, who was a deputy sheriff, confirmed that she owned multiple pistols and was highly skilled at shooting. One of her guns was a 9mm pistol, the same type used to kill Roney, though this particular weapon was never located. Investigators also learned that Marnie had attempted to construct her own silencer. Her bank statements revealed she had purchased a book titled How to Make a Disposable Silencer, along with a hacksaw and other materials from Home Depot. it can be used to make a disposable muffler. Detectives questioned Marnie about the evidence they had gathered. She said she bought the book as a joke gift for a friend and insisted she did not own a 9mm pistol or have any involvement in the crime. Despite her denials, 40-year-old Marnie was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Ronnie and her unborn child, based on the circumstantial evidence. The prosecution argued that Marnie's actions were driven by jealousy. She was infatuated with Sean and obsessed with keeping him to herself. To eliminate her rival, she sent anonymous letters to other women in Sean's life, causing many of them to leave him. However, Ronnie stayed. Although upset with Sean, Ronnie maintained their relationship, especially since she was carrying his child, a child he deeply wanted. Marnie doesn't want this child to be born because she knows that it might cause Sean and Ronnie to become more attached. Marnie's primary objective was to kill both the child and Ronnie. During the trial, witnesses familiar with Marnie testified about her extreme obsession with Sean and the drastic actions she took for his attention. They revealed that she had hacked into Sean's email account, read his correspondence with other women, and angrily deleted messages before he could see them. When she discovered emails from a woman named Monica, she devised a plan. Marnie, in Monica's writing style, sent an article exposing Sean from an anonymous email account with many errors. She spent the entire day talking about Sean, causing her colleagues to become concerned about her behavior. At the trial, even Marnie's daughter, Emilian, testified against her mother. Emilian, 20, expressed concern about Marnie's erratic behavior and obsession with Sean, which seemed to have driven her out of control. Sean also took the stand, detailing his tumultuous relationship with Marnie. He described their relationship as intense, but revealed that Marnie became deeply upset when she found out about other women in his life. She tried every way to keep him, but the obsession in her actions eventually drove him away. Sean said he had been planning to break up with her. When asked whether he believed Marnie could have murdered Ronnie, who was pregnant, he hesitated and expressed doubt. The prosecution's key witness was Christy Passion, a friend of Marnie's. Christy testified that Marnie had been reading Sean's emails and frequently expressed dissatisfaction with his relationships with other women. In the summer of 2007, Marnie confided in Christy about her frustration over Sean dating other women, and even mentioned plans to kill him. At the time, Christy took it as a joke and assumed she was simply venting. However, when Marnie discovered that Ronnie was pregnant, her focus shifted. She saw Ronnie as her main rival and became determined to eliminate Ronnie's at any cost. She told Christy about her plans to kill Ronnie instead of Sean, believing this would allow her and Sean to be happy together. Christy once again paid no attention to this, thinking it was just Marnie's imagination. Marnie later admits to Christy that she brought the weapon to Ronnie's apartment, but could not bring herself to do it. This confession makes Christy nervous, but Christy tries to comfort her and stop her from acting on her emotions. The day before the murder, she asked Christy to read her fortune to see if she would succeed in killing Ronnie. As an experienced tarot reader, Christy laid out the cards, and the one Marnie chose suggested success. Obsessed with the idea of killing Ronnie, the pregnant woman, Marnie ignored Christy's pleas and remained determined to carry out her plan. Christy later contacted Marnie, and they arranged to meet. During their conversation, Christy secretly wore a recording device, and the recording was later used as evidence. At this meeting, Marnie confessed to killing Ronnie, explaining the details of the crime. She revealed that she had disguised herself by wearing a wig, dark makeup, and gloves to avoid leaving any evidence. Marnie said she knocked on Ronnie's apartment door, and when Ronnie opened it, she drew her weapon and entered the house. She acted quickly, attacked Ronnie before Ronnie could scream. She admitted to being cautious, ensuring she didn't touch anything in the apartment and keeping her gloves on to avoid leaving traces. Marnie also described renting a black car, using a disposable phone, and then throw away the murder weapon, wig, gloves, and clothing in separate trash bins. She planned the murder meticulously so that it could not be detected, but Christie would testify against her. The recorded conversation became the prosecution's most compelling piece of evidence during the trial. The police investigation showed that Marnie's work computer had directions to Roney's house saved. They also confirmed that she rented a black Volkswagen on October 3. The vehicle's route was tracked from the rental location to Roney's apartment and back. However, the defense argued that there was no physical evidence that Marnie was at the scene, including DNA, fingerprints, or phone records. The case was based largely on circumstantial evidence in Christie's testimony. The defense wanted to discredit Christie by emphasizing her dubious background. They revealed that she had once claimed to be a psychic in the U.S. Army and said she was the sole survivor of a mission in the Middle East. However, it was later proven that she had fabricated her military service and had never even been in the Middle East. She had lied to enhance her qualifications for the role. The defense argued that Christie's testimony was unreliable and accused the police of falsely assigning blame to Marnie for the murder. The defense argued that there was no concrete evidence against Marnie, other than circumstantial evidence and recordings made under duress. The lawyer argued that Marnie confessed out of fear and in an attempt to protect her children, as her eldest son was under suspicion. Furthermore, an unidentified fingerprint was discovered on the door handle of Roney's apartment. The lawyer emphasized that the fingerprint did not belong to Marnie and that the police had failed to determine who it belonged to. The prosecutor acknowledged the existence of the fingerprint, confirming it was not in any database. However, they contended that the print could have been left by anyone passing by and was not necessarily linked to the crime. Marnie was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder for killing Roney Reuter and Roney's unborn child. She received 2 life sentences without parole. She and her lawyers opposed the sentence and filed an appeal, but it was denied. Marnie later claimed that she deliberately confessed to the murder to Christie to protect her son and stop people from bothering her. However, no one believed her explanation. Why would she include so many specific details about the murder if they weren't true? This makes no sense. The defense team argued that the black car seen on surveillance footage was not the Volkswagen that Marnie had rented. They also stated that a man had informed the police he had stolen Marnie's gun months before the murder, meaning she did not possess a gun at the time. Additionally, the murder weapon was never recovered at the crime scene. Fingerprints belonging to someone else were found, and they did not match Marnie's or any family member's fingerprints. The lawyer pointed out that male DNA was discovered on the cartridges at the crime scene, but it did not match Marnie's DNA and instead belonged to an unidentified man. The defense stressed that forensic analysis of the shooting angle indicated the attacker was taller than Marnie. Crucially, new CCTV footage from a hair salon showed Sean arriving for a haircut much later than he had claimed during police questioning. The footage revealed that he arrived at 10 a.m. on the day of Roney's murder, and she was killed before 8 a.m. Sean had previously told police he slept until 9:15 a.m. that morning, but evidence showed he had already sent a message to Roney and made several phone calls by 8:50 a.m. This video exposed inconsistencies in Sean's timeline, suggesting he could have had enough time to commit the murder. While the defense suspects Sean of being the perpetrator, they have not yet succeeded in having the case reopened. Marnie is still in prison and maintains her innocence. Sean, a former Chicago Bears player, played for the team for 11 seasons from 1984 to 1994, including their Super Bowl win in 1985. Having overcome his struggles in the United States, he now lives in London, United Kingdom, where he works as an NFL analyst for Sky Sports, a British sports channel, and regularly shares his expert analysis on weekly broadcasts. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Maria Luisa. Maria Luisa was born on May 29, 1977, in La Fortuna, San Carlos, in Alajuela, Costa Rica. She was the youngest of 5 children in a humble family. From an early age, she was ambitious and determined. She wanted to help people and dreamed of becoming a doctor, telling herself she would be the first in her family to get a college degree. During her school years, she excelled in chemistry and biology, her favorite subjects. After graduating in 1994, she was accepted into the country's most prestigious medical school, located in San Jose. As a student, Maria moved to the capital and lived there for the rest of her life. However, she still maintains a close relationship with her family, visiting and get in touch with them. In 2000, after earning her degree, Maria began working as an anesthesiologist at one of the largest medical centers in the capital. She quickly excelled in her career, continuously learning and honing her skills. By 2015, she had risen to become the head of the anesthesiology and recovery therapy department. She was highly respected and admired by her colleagues, become a famous doctor. However, to achieve success, Maria had to trade in her personal life. For many years, she was alone, fully dedicated to her work. In 2017, at the age of 40, she started dating a doctor at the same hospital, though he worked in a different department. She believed he was her true love and someone with whom she could build a happy family. Unfortunately, at the start of 2020, their relationship ended, and he started dating a younger co-worker. The breakup was a painful experience for Maria. She suffered from severe depression and focused only on work for months, barely paying attention to the world around her. Her only source of comfort was her small dog, Mafalda, she loved and cared for as if he were her child. In July 2020, Maria felt like she needed some time off and change your living environment to relax your mind. She decided to visit the coast and stay at a small, cozy hotel called La Mansion Inn, located in the picturesque Punta Arenas region. Before, this resort attracted tourists from around the world, but now this place is very deserted. At the hotel, only a few rooms were occupied, which provided the peace and quiet Maria was seeking. She planned to spend the weekend there and return home on Monday, bringing her beloved dog Mafalda along with her. Maria stayed in a room on the ground floor, has a second door leading to a private yard. These rooms are designed for guests with pets, so it can go outside and relieve themselves in a designated area. At the time, all the other rooms with courtyard access were unoccupied. On July 18, Maria arrived, left her belongings in her room, and went to the beach. The following day was equally uneventful. She walked along the shore, relaxed in the sun, had dinner at a restaurant, and returned to her room. That evening, she called her mother, and they talked for about 30 minutes. During the call, Maria remarked on how empty the hotel felt, with only a handful of staff members. She intended to check out the next morning, after breakfast, but she never did. On the morning of July 20, Maria did not come down for breakfast. The hotel staff noticed her absence, as there were very few guests, but assumed she was simply sleeping. However, when checkout time arrived, and she still hadn't appeared, they decided to check her room. 2 staff members knocked on her door but received no response. They could hear her dog barking inside, which confirmed she was there. Despite repeatedly knocking and calling her name, the only sound was the dog's barking. Concerned, they went to the courtyard to see if they could access her room from another entrance. They found the second door unlocked and decided to go inside to see what was going on. As soon as they stepped inside, they noticed brownish stains on the floor, resembling dried blood. On the bed, they discovered a body wrapped in a sheet. The staff immediately contacted emergency services and informed hotel management. Unfortunately, when paramedics arrived, they confirmed that Maria was dead. She had been killed several hours before her body was discovered. The scene was deeply unsettling, from the condition of the room to the circumstances surrounding her death. Maria's body showed multiple cuts, bruises, and bite marks inflicted by different individuals. Defensive wounds on her hands indicated she had fought back desperately. The cause of death was determined to be mechanical asphyxia and a broken neck. She had been strangled with such force that her cervical vertebrae were fractured. The autopsy confirmed that Maria had been sexually assaulted before her death. Beside her bed, there was a bottle of mineral water, an opened bottle of expensive wine, and 2 glasses. According to hotel staff, she had ordered these items the previous night, but she was alone at the time. Maria's keycard records show that after she received the items, she did not leave the room and no one entered. However, the glass door leading to the courtyard did not require a key, which could have allowed the attacker to gain access. The hotel had several security cameras that could have helped shed some light on the matter, but it turned out they had all been out of service for months. The hotel management explained that they had cut costs by shutting off the cameras. Forensic experts analyzed the bite marks on Maria's body for DNA, expecting to find the attacker's saliva. However, the results were shocking. The saliva belonged to Maria herself. Since the bite marks were located on her face, neck, and chest, areas she could not have reached herself, investigators deduced that the attacker had deliberately placed her saliva on the wounds to conceal their own DNA. Another disturbing detail revealed by the pathologist was that Maria's body had been thoroughly cleaned after her death. This indicated that after torturing, strangling, and killing her, the attackers washed her body in the bathroom, placed her back on the bed, contaminated the bite marks with her saliva, and wrapped her body in a sheet. Because the hotel's cameras were not working and the grounds were very deserted, no witnesses could be identified. Both guests and hotel staff reported that they did not see anything unusual, and they did not see any strangers appearing on the premises. The brutal murder of Maria, a famous anesthesiologist, quickly became the focus of national attention, causing great public outrage. Police are under pressure to investigate and find the culprit who committed the brutal act against an innocent woman. When asked if Maria might have had a brief romance during the trip, her family firmly denied it. She was still heartbroken over a recent breakup and had been hoping for reconciliation. Regarding the 2 glasses found in the room, Maria's sister explained that she always used 2 glasses, one for wine and one for water. Forensic analysis confirmed this explanation, as only Maria's fingerprints and lip marks were found on the glasses. During their interview with the police, her mother suddenly remembered something from her daughter's last phone call. Maria had mentioned chatting with a man who worked at the hotel during lunch. She said he had asked her why she was traveling alone and how long she planned to stay. This detail provided detectives with their first suspect to investigate. The employee in question was 38 years old, Teodoro Herrera, the son of a close friend of the hotel owner, Harry Bodon. In fact, thanks to his father's connection with Harry, he got the job at the hotel. He worked as a bartender and also ran personal errands for Harry. During his interview with the police, he behaved oddly. He was extremely nervous. He claimed that he did not know Maria and did not remember ever speaking to her. Detectives noticed fresh scratches on Teodoro's cheeks and neck, for which he couldn't provide a clear explanation. When asked to remove his shirt, similar scratches were found on his chest and shoulders. Investigators suspected these marks were left by Maria as she fought for her life, but they needed forensic confirmation. He was arrested and held for 6 months while the investigation continued. Forensic analysis later confirmed that blood and skin particles from Teodoro were found under Maria's nails. However, the bite marks on her body did not match his dental impressions. The investigation then shifted focus to a 36-year-old man named Luis Carlos Miranda. He was not a regular guest or employee at La Mansion Inn, but he was a friend of the hotel owner, Harry, and often stayed there for free. One of the bite marks on Maria's body was potentially linked to he, though it wasn't conclusive. Still, the police arrested him as a second suspect and detained him for 6 months, just like Teodoro. He also denied ever meeting Maria or having any interaction with her. About 10 days after the murder, a third suspect was arrested, Harry Baudon, the 69-year-old hotel owner. Harry, a businessman of Dutch origin, was well connected with politicians. He owned multiple properties across different countries. His arrest was prompted by a bite mark on Maria's body that matched his dental impressions. Investigators also discovered that about 6 months before the murder, he had undergone surgery at the hospital where Maria worked. Although he claimed he had never met her, police suspected he might have noticed her during his hospital stay, obtained her contact information, and lured her to his hotel. Initially, Harry was placed under house arrest due to his age and health problems. However, when he moved to a new residence without informing the authorities, he was taken into custody over concerns he might attempt to flee the country. Another individual connected to the case was Harry's husband, Yater Daniel Abanda. However, no evidence was found to convict him. He denied any involvement, stating that Harry had been unwell that night and had not left their room. After reviewing the autopsy and forensic results, investigators determined that there were 3 attackers involved. There were no signs of ropes or restraints used to hold down Maria, but all her limbs displayed bruises consistent with being pinned by hands. Fabric fibers and a thread were discovered inside her mouth, indicating she had been gagged. This likely explains why none of the other guests or staff heard her screams, although her injuries and signs of torture showed that she must have been desperately calling for help. On Maria's phone, found in her room, there were messages to her sister in which she praised the hotel. She described it as beautiful, cozy, and quiet, complimenting the staff for being attentive. She also mentioned spending the evening chatting and dancing at the bar with the man who served coffee, identified as Teodoro. From the start, Teodoro was the main suspect. He was the only suspect of the 3 with visible scratches, and forensic evidence revealed his skin and blood under Maria's fingernails. Additionally, his DNA was found on her body, despite his attempts to wash it off. However, dental cast comparisons showed that his teeth did not match the bite marks on her skin. After returning to her room, Maria stayed in her room all evening and didn't allow anyone inside. Investigators suspected the attackers entered through the door leading to the courtyard. It's possible she left the door unlocked for her dog to go outside. Since the neighboring rooms were unoccupied, no one would have noticed. Once inside, the attackers acted quickly. They struck Maria on the head, rendering her unconscious, gagged her, and then subjected her to hours of torture and assault. Afterward, they strangled her with such force that her neck was broken. They then washed her body in the bathroom, placed it on the bed, and wrapped it in a sheet, dirtying the bite wound with her saliva. During the trial, all 3 suspects, Teodoro, Harry, and Luis, denied involvement, claiming they were asleep in their rooms that night. However, no witnesses could corroborate their alibis. Investigators found disturbing text messages on their phones in which they shared frightening thoughts. The day before the crime, they even discussed a guest who was alone. The trial is set for September 2022, more than 2 years after the murder. Harry, 71, had to appear in court in a wheelchair because of worsening knee problems that made it difficult for him to walk. The prosecution immediately had difficulty proving Harry and Luis's involvement in the crime. The evidence against them was largely circumstantial, consisting of text messages and dental impressions. The defense argued that the bite marks should be dismissed as evidence because they did not perfectly match their dental records. To support this argument, Harry's lawyer hired an orthodontist from Madrid to testify. After analyzing the bite marks on Maria's body, orthodontist concluded that they were insufficient as evidence and could not definitively establish a link between Harry, Luis, and the crime. However, after orthodontist returned to Spain the following day, the prosecution questioned his credentials. Further investigation confirmed that he did not have a valid certificate and was merely a self-proclaimed expert. As a result, his testimony was discredited, and thrown out. Despite this, the prosecution was determined to prove a connection between Harry, Louise, and the case. They argued that the brutal, calculated nature of the assault and murder indicated the involvement of at least 3 people. The defense denied this claim, insisting that a healthy individual was perfectly capable of performing the act without assistance. The verdict was delivered with clear and undeniable evidence, all pointing to Teodoro Herrera as the culprit. His DNA was found in Maria's body, his skin cells appeared under her fingernails, and her blood was discovered both on the outside and inside of his shoes. The shoe prints matched those found at the entrance of her room and near the bed. Consequently, he was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole. At 40 years old, this effectively amounted to a life sentence. He admitted to being intimate with Maria that night, but claimed it was consensual and insisted someone else must have killed her after he left. In contrast, there was insufficient evidence against Harry and Louise. Apart from bite marks and text messages, nothing concrete linked them to the crime. As a result, they were acquitted and released in March 2023. However, in September of the same year, an appeals court revisited the case after a complaint from Maria's family and ordered it to be reopened. By then, Harry and Louise had already fled Costa Rica, leaving the country immediately after their release. They are currently living in the Netherlands, and even if the trial is reopened and they are found guilty, they will not face any consequences because the Netherlands and Costa Rica do not have an extradition treaty, even though this is a very serious crime. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Victoria Nasirova. On September 2, 2016, police received a call from Olga Zvik, 35, a Ukrainian immigrant who worked as a beautician, who reported that several valuables had gone missing from her bedroom. She explained to police that she had recently been to the hospital, where she experienced severe dizziness and nausea, with occasional loss of consciousness. Even after returning home, she continued to appear distracted. During the investigation, the police conducted a detailed interrogation of Olga. She recalled a recent troubling encounter with a client named Victoria Nasirova, who came to her home and insisted on urgent eyelash extensions. Victoria had been in contact with the salon before and often acted as if she and Olga were friends. However, on that day, Victoria asked to come to Olga's home to get eyelash extensions. Olga explained that she only worked at the salon and did not accept home customers, but Victoria deliberately ignored her explanation and insisted on urgent eyelash extensions, and Olga finally agreed. Olga later told the police that Victoria had tried to ask her out several times, but she had refused. Another notable detail was that Victoria looked very similar to Olga, which often made Olga feel uncomfortable. During the investigation, it was discovered that Victoria had shown up at Olga's apartment with 3 pieces of cheesecake from the best local bakery. Victoria ate 2 and insisted that Olga have a third, to which Olga eventually agreed. After a brief tea party with cheesecakes, Olga felt unwell. Once Victoria left, Olga became extremely nauseous and lost consciousness for about 30 minutes. When she woke up, she called 911 and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. However, the doctors found nothing wrong in her blood tests. Upon returning home, Olga discovered that some of her valuables were missing and reported the theft to the police. Police were initially skeptical of her story, suspecting that Olga may have been under the influence of drugs, which were causing her to hallucinate. Her unusual behavior and appearance contributed to their suspicions. Police concluded that her account of the incident, including her reference to a woman who resembled her, was likely fabricated. Olga firmly denied using drugs and presented her argument convincingly. She believed that her issues stemmed from a piece of cheesecake she had eaten, suggesting it might have been poisoned. The police quickly inspected the scene and discovered a box from a local bakery in the trash. Olga identified the box as the cheesecake Victoria had brought. The police collected it as evidence because it still had crumbs left inside. Analysis of the cheesecake could determine whether it was the cause of Olga's problems. The examination of the cheesecake revealed no abnormalities. Despite this, the Olga insisted that the dessert was the reason for her illness. She mentioned that she had visited the hospital where doctors examined her but found nothing unusual. In response to inquiries about her condition and the tests conducted, police contacted the hospital. However, the doctors declined to share information due to privacy policies. The police interpreted this refusal as further evidence to doubt the Olga's claims. Additionally, they could not locate the client mentioned by Olga, leading to a postponement of the case until more information becomes available. A neighbor provided details after noticing a suspicious woman near Olga's apartment the following day. The woman appeared several times, lingering around Olga's apartment until she encountered the neighbor. The strange woman said that her friend Olga was sick and then left in a hurry. Concerned, the neighbor noticed that Olga's apartment door was open and decided to check on her. When she entered, the neighbor found the apartment uncomfortably hot, with the heating system on full blast despite the hot summer weather. Olga was alive but unconscious in bed, dressed strangely, in a revealing bra and sweatpants. The police felt that someone had deliberately changed her clothes. Scattered around her were powerful pills, suggesting that Olga may have taken them with the intention of ending her life. The neighbor quickly called 911, describing the strange woman as dark-haired, attractive, and very similar to Olga. After receiving new information, the police were convinced that the woman who resembled Olga was real and not a figment of Olga's imagination. Therefore, the police intensified their efforts to investigate the case. The police suspected that Victoria Nasirova, who was involved in a cheesecake in the previous case, was involved in this case. The police began searching for Victoria, but they had no clues or even any photos of her. However, a private investigator, who had been monitoring Victoria's activities for a long time, tracked Victoria down on the internet and contacted the police. He located Victoria where she was advertising her escort services on a dating website and social media. The private investigator suspected that she used these platforms to find victims for her crimes. Her methods were effective. Victoria would meet her victims, drug them with psychotropic substances to render them unconscious, and then steal their valuables. Meanwhile, Olga eventually recovered from her traumatic experience. After leaving the hospital, she shared her story of poisoning on social media. Soon after, one of her clients mentioned a man named Ruben Barakov who had gone through a similar situation. Ruben owned a dry cleaning business and had met a woman named Victoria on a Russian dating site a few months before Olga suffered cheese poisoning. Victoria had invited Ruben to her home, bragging about her cooking skills. He accepted the invitation, but as soon as he tasted her food, he passed out. Victoria then rummaged through his pockets, taking an expensive watch, cash, and cards. Ruben was under the influence of a powerful psychoactive substance and truly believed that it had nearly killed him. Victoria then took him to a dry cleaner's. She explained to Ruben's colleagues that he was drunk and she left. When Ruben regained consciousness, he realized that he had been robbed. The private investigator suspected the situation was much more serious and that the two victims were lucky to be alive. In 2017, he worked with a client from Russia who asked him to help track down a dangerous criminal. Nadia Ford contacted the private investigator after her biological mother, Alla Alexienko, went missing. Nadia currently lives in New York, USA, but was born in Russia. Nadia, who is from Krasnodar, was raised by her mother, Alla, who worked hard to provide for her children. Nadia had dreamed of living in the United States since she was a child, and her dream came true when she came to study in America in 2007. While there, she met a man, married him, and took his last name, Ford. However, their marriage did not last, and they eventually divorced. Nadia chose to stay in the United States and successfully built her life there. She kept a close relationship with her mother, Alla, who was living alone at the time. Alla sold her house and then moved to a new apartment. In early 2013, after moving into a new apartment, Alla had a new neighbor named Victoria Nasirova. Despite the significant age difference, Victoria quickly became friends with Alla. Alla shared stories about her daughter's life in the United States, which sparked Victoria's interest in visiting America and meeting Nadia. Alla then arranged for them to meet. In September 2013, Victoria went to New York, where she met Nadia, and they became close friends. Nadia was a kind and pleasant woman. Victoria sought her advice on how to stay in the United States, and Nadia shared a few tips. However, Victoria's plans did not work out, and she eventually returned to Russia. Despite this, she maintained a close relationship with Alla. In the fall of 2014, Victoria planned another trip to the United States, and she told Alla that she could help send gifts to Nadia. Trusting Victoria, Alla happily agreed. Alla then brought $6,000 in cash and valuables, including 2 expensive mink coats, to send to Nadia. Victoria then repeatedly postponed her trip to the United States for various reasons, leaving Alla worried about whether she would actually go and what would happen to her gifts. Worried, Alla called her daughter Nadia to express her concerns. Nadia reassured her mother and suggested that she ask Victoria to return her belongings. On October 4, 2014, Alla called Nadia with the good news that she had finally spoken to Victoria, who agreed to return her valuables. However, this never happened, and Alla soon disappeared. Nadia kept calling her mother, but she didn't answer. This was unusual, since they were in contact every day. Worried, Nadia contacted Victoria to ask about her mother. Victoria confirmed that she had seen Alla, and they had talked and had tea together. Victoria then left, never saw Alla again. Victoria mentioned that Alla was planning to go somewhere, but she didn't know where. Victoria also tried to contact Alla, and even visited Alla's apartment to check on her, but there was no sign of her mother being home. Alla was still unreachable. After a few days, Nadia and her brother received a number of unusual text messages from an unknown number, supposedly from their mother Alla. The messages stated that there was no need to look for her because she was happy. However, the way the messages were written was inconsistent with Alla's style, which raised their concerns. Nadia realized that something was definitely wrong and decided to book the next flight to Russia to assist in the investigation into her mother's disappearance. Upon arriving in Krasnodar, Nadia went to her mother's apartment, but it was stripped of valuables that Victoria was supposed to return. There was no trace of her mother. Concerned, Nadia quickly contacted the police and reported her mother's disappearance. She informed the police about her suspicions regarding Victoria, a neighbor of her mother who had become suspiciously close to her and failed to return Alla belongings. It soon became clear that Victoria had a motive to harm Alla. The police were interested in the information and devised a plan. Nadia called Victoria and pressed Victoria for information about her mother's whereabouts. Victoria, angered by Nadia's questions, shouted that her mother was still alive, but Victoria did not know where she was. The police, who had been listening in on the call, decided to approach Victoria. At her home, she successfully convinced the police that she was not involved and claimed that Nadia's accusations were baseless, with no evidence against her. Meanwhile, Nadia returned to her mother's apartment to investigate. She noticed that the place was surprisingly clean, with no dust, as if it had just been thoroughly cleaned, despite her mother's absence for several days. This raised questions for Nadia. Who could have cleaned the apartment? Additionally, she discovered that several valuable items, including jewelry and $50,000 in cash, were missing. Concerned, Nadia decided to report this to the police. The police, after speaking with Victoria, tried to persuade her that her mother had taken the money and jewelry on a trip and would be back soon. However, Nadia did not buy this explanation. She sensed that her mother was in danger and that it had something to do with Victoria. Nadia reached out to all her mother's friends and relatives, but no one knew where her mother was. In her desperation, Nadia printed flyers with her mother's photo and posted them all over the neighborhood. She also drove around the city, visiting her mother's favorite places, but her efforts were unproductive. Nadia contacted Victoria, begging her to return her mother and expressing her willingness to do anything, even offer a reward. However, Victoria denied any involvement. Despite this, Nadia remained hopeful that her mother was still alive and continued to search. She regularly went to the police for updates, but there was no information about her mother. Determined to find answers, Nadia hired a private investigator. After investigating, the private investigator discovered that Victoria had rented a car from a service center on the day Alla went missing. He checked the car's information and reviewed surveillance camera footage from October 5, 2014. The videos show a car driving on a highway outside the city. There were two people inside, Victoria, who was driving, and Alla Alexinko, motionless in the front passenger seat. She shared this information with the police, who confirmed that Victoria had rented the car and brought her in for questioning. Victoria admitted that she had driven the rental car that morning, October 5, but she denied that there was anyone else in the car with her. Victoria agreed to take a lie detector test. After completing the test, she was released, but the results later showed that she had failed, leading the police to consider her a prime suspect in the case. Before the police could arrest her, Victoria fled the country without notifying the police. They began searching for Victoria. Nadia remained in Russia for another 6 months to assist in the investigation, holding out hope that her mother was still alive. She also contacted Interpol for help in finding Victoria. Police traced the rental car to a dense forest in Armavir, which turned out to be Victoria's hometown. This is where the search for Alla began. Nadia's hopes of her mother's safe return were dashed in April 2015, when police informed her of the tragic news. Her charred remains were found in the same forest, about a 3-hour drive from where Alla went missing. Nadia was able to identify her mother through her dental records, as the rest of her body was badly burned and unrecognizable. The cause of death could not be determined. Following the identification, an arrest warrant was issued for Victoria Nasirova, and her case was referred to Interpol. After her mother's funeral in Krasnodar, Nadia returned to the United States. She found it difficult to cope with her mother's death and was unable to work for a long period. Eventually, she gathered her strength and made a promise to her mother that she would seek justice and ensure that those responsible for Alla's death would be punished. One day, Nadia discovered a photo of Victoria on social media. The wanted woman was showing off her lavish lifestyle in Mexico. After discovering this, Nadia contacted the U.S. police to report Victoria's whereabouts, and they began an investigation. At this point, Nadia hired one of the top private detectives in the United States to speed up the investigation. A wealthy friend of Nadia covered the cost of the detective's services, which she could not afford since she had not been working for several months while searching for her mother. The private detective thoroughly examined Victoria's social media photos and was able to confirm that she was already in the U.S. One of the selfies, taken while wearing sunglasses, showed a reflection of a car's dashboard. After examining hundreds, even thousands of cars, the private investigator determined it was a Chrysler 300. The private investigator was able to determine that the last photos were taken in Sheepshead Bay, a neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. By checking a database of cars in that area, he was able to narrow down his search and identify a suspect. He discovered that Victoria was living with her boyfriend in an apartment complex just 5 blocks from Nadia, and that the Chrysler was registered to her new boyfriend. Victoria was probably unaware that the case had escalated to the point where Interpol had a global warrant for her arrest, which is why she felt safe posting her photos online. The private investigator located the boyfriend and contacted him. It was discovered that he had been poisoned by Victoria. She followed her usual methods of poisoning her boyfriend and even poisoned his beagle, which unfortunately died. Victoria's freedom poses a danger, as her potential victims could increase. The police searched Victoria's apartment and discovered Olga Tsvik's identity card. This discovery sheds light on why Olga was targeted by Victoria. Victoria needed money and valuables, but she also needed an ID that. With her temporary visa about to expire, she was looking to use someone else's ID to avoid returning to Russia, where she would have to stand trial. Police believe she intended to kill Olga, the real owner of the passport, to steal their identity. Fortunately, Olga survived thanks to the quick action of a neighbor. Additionally, the box containing the remains of the cheesecake was sent for analysis, marking a significant breakthrough in the investigation. The investigation returned to the lab, where researchers analyzed the cheesecake. It was determined that Victoria had used a sedative, but she had used a higher dose, which rendered her victims unconscious. Olga was lucky to survive after eating the cheesecake. The high temperature in her apartment was no accident. Heat amplifies the effects of the drug and can even be fatal. Victoria apparently knew this, so she increased the temperature in the house and tried to dress Olga in warmer clothes. But luckily, Olga was discovered by neighbors in time. After her arrest, Victoria denied all allegations against her, including the murder of Alla, who was Nadia's mother. She also rejected claims that she attempted to murder Olga Tsvik and other victims. Victoria had previously been a suspect in the theft of 2 fur items in May 2016, but that case did not progress. Additional incidents emerged involving her in thefts, where she would meet men online, visit their homes, drug them, and rob them. Most of the men chose not to report these crimes to the police due to concerns about publicity, allowing Victoria to evade consequences. The trial was delayed for a long time. The case finally went to court in January 2023, attracting considerable media and public attention. Victoria chose not to testify at the trial and remained silent. The court could not discuss the details of Alla's death because it happened in another country. Victoria's defense argued that there was no evidence that Victoria had poisoned the cheesecake and forced Olga to eat it. Victoria herself ate 2 pieces in front of Olga and had no problems. The prosecution then argued that Victoria had only added poison to 1 piece of cheesecake, specifically the 3rd piece she offered Olga. She ate the other 2 pieces without the poison. This misled Olga. After a lengthy deliberation, the jury found Victoria Nasirova guilty of 2nd-degree murder. Although the maximum sentence for the crime is 25 years, the judge shortened her sentence to 21 years. By law, she could apply for parole after serving 15 years. Victoria faced harsh prison life. She frequently complained about poor food and inadequate medical care. During her incarceration, she was attacked, leaving her scarred and nearly blind. After the attack, Victoria sued the prison, alleging that guards were negligent in failing to support her. The case ended in a $325,000 settlement. In a recent interview from prison, Victoria denied any wrongdoing, including Alla's murder. She claimed that she had nothing to do with poisoning beautician Olga with the cheesecake, explaining that she had eaten the cheesecake herself and had not become ill. Victoria said that she had only shared a piece of cheesecake with Olga and had not forced her to eat it. After completing her prison sentence in the United States, Victoria will be deported to Russia, where she will face trial for Alla's murder. Her daughter Nadia said she was relieved that Victoria was in prison and would not be able to escape justice. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rocio Waninkoff. Hilaria Alicia Hornos was born on December 2, 1952, in the rural province of Jaén, Spain, specifically in the city of Arroyo de Lojanco. At the age of 24, she fell in love and married Willem Waninkoff, a Dutch citizen. They had 3 children, a son, Guillermo, followed by 2 daughters, Rosa and Rocio. However, as their family grew, so did the strain on their marriage. Willem suffered from alcoholism, which led to frequent absences from home and eventually led to his losing his job. Their arguments escalated, with Willem sometimes raising his voice at Alicia and becoming aggressive. To support her family, Alicia took a job as a maid at a hotel in Ibiza. During this difficult period, she met Dolores, who was the director of the hotel where she worked. Dolores Vasquez was the daughter of immigrants from Galicia. She is highly educated and polite, and a very interesting conversationalist. A strong friendship developed between Alicia and Dolores, which later developed into a romantic relationship. A year after starting her relationship with Dolores, Alicia decided to divorce Willem. He then returned to the Netherlands, and Alicia moved in with Dolores. Soon after, the couple bought a new house in Malaga. After the divorce, Alicia gained custody of all 3 children and raised them with Dolores. All 3 of Alicia's children loved Dolores, and the 5 of them lived together as a family. In 1988, Alicia and Dolores chose to end their romantic relationship, but continued to live together as friends until 1994. After 11 years, they parted ways, and Alicia began dating a man named Juan Charillo. She moved into a new place and embraced her new romantic life. With her children grown and her new partner by her side, life felt vibrant and full of love. On the morning of October 10th, 1999, Alicia discovered that her daughter, Rocio, was missing. Initially, she wasn't alarmed, thinking Rocio might have spent the night at her boyfriend's house or a friend's place. However, as the day went on and Rocio still had not returned, Alicia grew worried. The family reached out to Rocio's friends and boyfriend, hoping to find out where she was, but no one had seen her. On the evening of October 9th, Rocio left home around 5:30 p.m. after saying goodbye to her mother and older sister, Rosa. She was headed to a fair in Fuengirola with her boyfriend, Antonio, and her friends. Rocio lived in the La Tierra neighborhood, which was very close to Antonio's house. She spent time at his place until 10:30 p.m. and planned to return home briefly to shower and change before heading to the fair. Unfortunately, she never arrived home. Although Alicia was worried about her daughter Rocio's disappearance, she chose to go for a walk with Juan, instead of contacting the police immediately. While walking down the street, Alicia noticed a large blood stain on the road. She pointed it out to Juan, who initially didn't think much of it. However, as they got closer, Alicia noticed her daughter's sneakers lying there with drops of blood on them. Alicia was very panicked, and while walking, they also discovered a napkin and some blood on a vacant lot next to the path Rocio often walked. Alicia immediately called the police, and a missing person report was filed with a detailed description of Rocio. She had long hair, brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a white Nike t-shirt and purple pants. Police quickly arrived at the scene where the blood was found, and forensic officers conducted a forensic examination of the crime scene to determine whose blood was on the road and sneakers. Initially, the investigation suggested that there had been an assault or fight that resulted in injuries. The trail showed several bloodstains, including long ones that looked like someone had moved quickly, possibly running. Eventually, the bloodstains disappeared, but the search team discovered a large trail that suggested significant blood loss. They also discovered bloody footprints. These led to tire tracks where the bloodstains stopped. Next to the tire tracks, they found a cigarette butt from a brand that is not common in Spain. Forensic teams have collected all relevant samples to assist in the investigation, and it is hoped that DNA from these samples will help identify people who were at the scene. A detailed investigation was conducted, along with analysis of the blood found at the scene. Although the search for Rocio continues, police believe it is highly likely that Rocio was murdered. The blood trail began on the sidewalk and led to a large pool of blood, indicating significant blood loss that likely led to her death. Nearby, there were drag marks near the tire. This tire was identified from a small car, specifically a tire model that was discontinued in 1993. Since the drag marks extended over a steep area, it can be concluded that at least 2 people moved the body before a vehicle later arrived to remove the body. The search for Rocio continued, with volunteers scouring the area on foot and on motorbikes. Flyers with Rocio's picture were widely distributed, and news channels reported extensively on Rocio's disappearance. The family actively cooperated with journalists to get the word out about Rocio. Reporters from all television channels gathered outside Rocio Vaninkoff's home, hoping for her safe return. However, as time passed, the search yielded no clues. A few days after Rocio's disappearance, a local taxi driver came to the police station with vital information. He reported that on the night of Rocio's disappearance, around 10 p.m., he narrowly avoided a collision with an SUV traveling at high speed in the opposite lane near where Rocio's sneakers were found on the side of the road. As he passed the car, he also heard a loud scream. This evidence strongly suggested that Rocio had been abducted and murdered by an unknown assailant. DNA analysis later confirmed that the blood found on the road belonged to Rocio. The news left her family devastated, and the sense of loss quickly spread, affecting not only Rocio's loved ones, but the entire country of Spain. On November 2, 1999, 25 days after Rocio's disappearance, a disfigured body, believed to be Rocio's, was discovered near the Los Altos del Rodeo Athletic Club, between Marbella and San Pedro de Alcantara. The body was partially obscured by bushes and leaves, lying behind a fence separating a residential area from a nearby highway. The body was found on a narrow road that was difficult for cars to access. Rocio's body was found in another town. When police arrived, they found the body severely decomposed. During the collection of evidence, large black garbage bags containing Rocio's clothing were found. One of the bags had the number 8 painted on it, suggesting that the bags had been reused rather than purchased specifically for transporting the body. Police found clothing that they believed might belong to the missing Rocio. Her sister Rosa identified several rings, 2 t-shirts, and other items in 2 trash bags near the body as belonging to Rocio. The t-shirts had been torn from stab wounds. Rocio's body was then taken to the laboratory for forensic analysis, where experts worked carefully, applying their knowledge and skills. They faced a difficult task due to the severe decomposition of the body. Decomposition occurs much more quickly in rain and high temperatures, especially when there is humidity. The objective was to gather additional evidence to aid the investigation and understand how the attack happened. Several closed wounds were discovered, along with 8 stab wounds on the Rocio's back. Experts believe the attack was swift and violent, suggesting the Rocio was either restrained or unable to defend themselves. Fingerprints were found on plastic bags at the scene where the body was located. The police already had fingerprints and tire tracks from a vehicle, and they also collected 2 tissue samples from Rocio's body. At that stage, there was insufficient evidence to identify a specific suspect, but the investigation had gathered some information and leads. Public pressure had a significant impact on the investigation, prompting police to quickly search for evidence, but they were unable to. Because Rocio's body was so badly decomposed, they were unable to determine whether she had been sexually assaulted. Police speculated that the crime was motivated by personal vendetta and deep anger, suggesting that the attacker may have been an acquaintance or someone very close to Rocio. After collecting evidence, the police conducted further interviews. First, they questioned Rocio's boyfriend, Antonio Hurat, who was the last person to see her alive and was supposed to see her that night. He gave an alibi, saying he had fallen asleep at home and had not attended the fair that day. The police also questioned all of Rocio's relatives and friends, but each had a solid alibis. A year after Rocio Wanenkoff's death, the police had narrowed down the number of suspects, and by the end of that year, they had identified a prime suspect, Dolores Vasquez. There was no evidence against Dolores, but the media led people to believe that Dolores was guilty. Dolores was the lover of Alicia, Rocio's mother. Unfortunately, journalists distorted and even fabricated the story, claiming that Alicia had accused Dolores from the first day after Rocio's death. In reality, their relationship had ended 4 years before the crime. The investigation followed the media story, focusing only on Dolores and creating a motive in the case. People speculated that Rocio may have interfered with the romantic relationship between the two. Many believed that if Rocio had not intervened, Alicia would have returned to Dolores. It was implied that Dolores had acted out of revenge against Rocio. The media and public were quick to accuse Dolores of murder when she was arrested, although she did not confess to any of the crimes. The local community was certain of her guilt, largely because police suspected that the killer was someone close to Rocio. Family members described Dolores as aggressive, violent, and extremely jealous. Alicia, meanwhile, told reporters that Dolores was both vengeful and cruel. Dolores was widely criticized by the public. Her unconventional lifestyle was a target during the trial, as it was considered unusual in Spain. The media portrayed her as a violent and cold-blooded woman who had spent 4 years plotting her hate crimes. The trial attracted a large crowd gathered outside the courthouse. Journalists have widely reported that a close family friend has been charged with Rocio's murder. Dolores is unpopular and faces an uphill battle in court. Public opinion matters in this case. Rumors and sensational media reports are likely to sway the jury's opinion. Virtually every television station has portrayed Dolores Vasquez as responsible for Rocio's death. In reality, there was no evidence against Dolores. However, it seemed that the justice system felt the need to convict someone and chose her as a scapegoat due to her questionable alibi and various flaws. Dolores was not present at the crime scene. The tire tracks did not match her car, the fabric fibers found did not come from her clothes, and the fingerprints on the trash bags did not belong to her. She also had an alibi, stating that she was babysitting her sick mother and her young niece that day, but this was ignored. Over 50 witnesses were called to testify in court. Dolores only took the stand once and stated that she did not kill Rocio and that she did not even see her that day. She asked all of Spain to find the real culprit because it was not her, and that person could have been in the courtroom at the time. She stated that there was no evidence against her and never would be because she was innocent. It is noted that the judicial system in Spain is often criticized for being inadequate and often bending the law. Prosecutors and police in Spain focus on prioritizing their theories over justice, showing a complete disregard for the legal process. The police report highlighted circumstantial evidence linking Dolores to the crime and included a psychological profile of her, as there was no physical evidence. Ultimately, the jury found Dolores Vasquez guilty of murder, resulting in a 16-year prison sentence. The verdict was met with public celebration. Rocio's funeral drew a large crowd. During this time, the Rocio family and the local community felt a growing sense of fear. This atmosphere of fear was amplified by the numerous television programs that covered the case. After Dolores's arrest, the Rocio family appeared on various programs, sharing past stories that described Dolores as cold, unfriendly, demanding, and cruel. It took years and another similar crime to reveal that Rocio Wanenkoff was not killed by Dolores Vasquez. On the morning of August 15, 2003, the parents of 17-year-old Sonia Carabantes reported her missing to the police. Sonia's friends said they had dropped Sonia off at her home, but she was not there. A short distance from her home, near a tree, her parents discovered her shoes, purse, and cell phone, along with traces of blood on nearby cars. The police quickly began searching for and investigating Sonia's case. As time went on, the family's despair deepened. They searched the neighborhood, but the bloodstains on Sonia's clothes left little hope that she would be returned safely. A key piece of evidence in Sonia's case was the car's headlights. The police contacted all local auto repair shops to find a car with a broken headlight matching the description. At the same time, the police found many similarities between Rocio's and Sonia's cases. Both girls had disappeared during the fair. All employees working at the fairs in Coin and Matril were investigated, as was the case with Rocio. Flyers with Sonia's picture were widely distributed, and many people actively participated in the search for her. They not only volunteered their time, but also provided any assistance needed to help the police. Police continued their investigation. However, on the 5th day after Sonia went missing, search dogs led them to Sonia's body, which was hidden in a creek under a pile of rocks. Heavy rains the night before had washed away any evidence that could help identify her attacker. On the day of her disappearance, Sonia had been at a fair in Coin. She had said goodbye to her friends near her home, where she was then attacked. Her attacker struck her multiple times, leaving her unconscious and defenseless due to the sudden and violent nature of the attack. The attacker then abducted her by car to a remote area away from her home. Sonia suffered both internal and external injuries before being strangled, ultimately resulting in her death. Sonia was found quickly, allowing police to gather and analyze crucial evidence from her body. Colonel Paca Gabella announced that significant evidence was discovered, including biological material. This was analyzed and added to the police forensic DNA database, leading to matches with genetic material found on a cigarette butt from the Rocio-Waninkoff case. When comparing the two DNA samples, they were identical. This revealed that the man who killed Rocio in 1999 was the same individual who attacked Sonia. This suggests that Dolores Vasquez, who was wrongly convicted, while the real killer is still at large, took the life of another young girl. The evidence is clear: an English cigarette butt from Rocio's case and the skin particles found under Sonia's fingernails, all linked to the same offender. On September 18, Cecilia Pantoja, a young woman, contacted the police with suspicions about her ex-husband after seeing blood on his t-shirt just days after Sonia's body was found. Cecilia also mentioned that her ex-husband was away from home twice, driving somewhere on the day of the attack on Rocio. With the help of DNA testing and Cecilia's testimony, the police were able to identify the real killer of both Rocio and Sonia as Tony Alexander King. Tony's criminal activities began as a teenager in the Holloway area of North London. In 1985, the area was hit by a series of violent attacks on women, where victims were strangled and assaulted. At the time, Tony went by his birth name, Anthony Bramwit, then 19, was convicted of strangling 5 women until they were unconscious, using a rope or cable, and then assaulting them. The judge sentenced Tony to 10 years in prison, calling him a monster for his actions. Tony served only half of his sentence and was released in 1991, but he returned to prison shortly afterwards for robbing a woman and threatening her with a knife. He changed his name to Tony Alexander King in search of a new life, married Cecilia Pantoja, and tried to have a normal family life. They had a daughter together, but Tony soon returned to his old ways. A month after Sonia's death, he was arrested. During questioning, Tony admitted to killing 2 innocent girls. After his arrest, he recounted that he followed Rocio as she walked home from her boyfriend's house and threatened her with a knife when she tried to escape. Rocio was attacked with a knife in the neck, and Tony then stabbed her 9 times. In 2005, Tony Alexander King was sentenced to 36 years in prison for kidnapping, assault, and murder of Sonia. The court also ordered Tony to pay her family about $350,000. Tony was also sentenced to 7 years in prison for intentionally causing violence against a woman in Malaga in 2001. The following year, Tony was convicted of Rocio's murder and received an additional 19-year sentence. Before the trial, Tony wrote to Sonia and Rocio's mother, begging for their forgiveness. He is currently serving his sentence at Herrera de la Mana Maximum Security Prison in Ciudad Real, Spain. After the case was over, a huge scandal broke out in Spain because the innocent Dolores Vasquez was wrongly convicted of the murder of Rocio Wanenkoff. It is hard to accept that not only can the police and the courts unfairly punish innocent people, but society can also judge and degrade them harshly. Even when a person can prove their innocence, they are still not recognized. It took more than a year to confirm that Dolores Vasquez was telling the truth and that she was completely innocent. In 2008, the Spanish Ministry of Justice offered Dolores Vasquez 120,000 euros in compensation, significantly less than the 4 million euros she had originally requested. Despite her wrongful conviction, Dolores never received an apology from the police. After being released from prison, Dolores returned to the UK. Now, more than 20 years later, Dolores has yet to receive an apology for her conviction, nor has she received any compensation since her case was closed in 2014. She works for a transport company in East London and has undergone a psychological assessment following her traumatic experience. She recently said she is still waiting for an apology after suffering from anxiety for years, which has made it difficult for her to communicate with others. The case of Dolores Vasquez, who was wrongfully imprisoned, is considered one of the most serious miscarriages of justice in Spain since 1910. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Carrie Ann Jopek. Carrie Ann Jopek was born on August 17, 1968, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a large city with a population of over 500,000. Her parents, Carolyn and Robert, divorced when she was very young. Shortly after, her mother remarried a man named Frederick. The family lived in downtown Milwaukee along with 2 daughters, the youngest of whom was named Maggie. Carrie grew up in a loving family and had a close relationship with Frederick, whom she considered her biological father. She did not know of her biological father's existence, as he did not communicate with her. Carrie was well educated and had everything she needed. She was friendly and kind, which helped her make many friends, including older teenagers. However, during her teenage years, Carrie's personality began to change, leading to conflicts with her mother and stepfather. When she discovered that Frederick was not her biological father, she became very angry with her parents. She often used this information against him in arguments. Some relatives described Carrie as stubborn, while others thought she was simply going through a challenging period in her life, especially since she was only 13 years old at the time. On March 15, 1982, Carrie was allowed by her parents to stay overnight at her friend Marcia's house. Since both girls were in 7th grade, they went to school together the next morning, March 16. However, because they were in different classes, they could only see each other at lunchtime. Carrie was upset because her teacher had reprimanded her for arguing with another student who had spilled paint on her. The teacher then contacted Carrie's parents to report Carrie's behavior and truancy. The teachers suggested that Carrie's mother pick her up after school to discuss her actions. However, Carrie's house was close enough to the school, so her mother allowed Carrie to walk home by herself. Carrie was upset. She knew her mother and stepfather would probably scold her, so she didn't want to go home. Her friend comforted her, and they parted ways after school. Although reluctant, Carrie had to go home because she lived only a few blocks from school. Normally, it would only take her 3 minutes to walk home, but that day, she never returned. It is important to note that the 1980s in America were generally a safe time. People trusted each other, and crime rates were low compared to today. Additionally, the incident occurred in a crowded area where everyone knew each other, so no one thought it was strange for a 13-year-old girl to walk home from school alone. Carrie did not come home. Carolyn waited for her at home and then went out to look for her. Carolyn thought that Carrie had stopped to visit a friend on the way home and would be back soon. It is important to note that they could not contact Carrie because cell phones had not yet been invented. As the night wore on, Carolyn grew increasingly concerned. She set out again to look for her daughter. First, she went to see Carrie's best friend, Robin, who lived across the street. Unfortunately, no one in Robin's house had seen or heard from Carrie since school ended. Next, Carolyn contacted Marsh, who had spent the night with Carrie. However, Marsh did not see Carrie after she left. Eager to help, Carrie's friends joined the search and began checking with neighbors and classmates who might have seen her after school, but no one had any information. By 11 p.m., a search party of local volunteers who knew the family was formed. Many neighbors, friends, and acquaintances took to the streets to patrol the area and ask questions. Unfortunately, they could not find any information about the Carrie. They decided to wait for Carrie until the next morning. On March 17, when the girl still had not returned home, Carolyn went to the police station to report her missing. By then, the Carrie had been missing for almost a day, prompting police to act quickly, as the situation could be serious. Initially, the primary theory was that Carrie had run away, as she was known to be a difficult teenager who sometimes skipped classes and often spent the night at friends' houses. Police thought that Carrie was simply spending time with friends. However, after interviewing all her friends, they realized this was not the case. None of them had seen Carrie after school, leading them to conclude that something must have happened to her on her way home. They then began questioning residents living along her route that day, but these inquiries yielded no useful information. None of the residents had seen Carrie or noticed anything unusual. The police discovered that Carrie had been upset with her family after learning that her stepfather was not her biological father. Police believed this revelation might have driven her to search for her biological father, whom she could have gone to see that day. By this time, a day had passed since Carrie left school, and there was still no news about her. The police located her biological father, Robert, who lived in a different area of Malak, hoping she might be with him. Unfortunately, when they contacted him, their hopes were dashed. Robert explained that he had been at work all day the previous day and had not seen Carrie. A thorough inspection was carried out at the house of the Carrie. Police searched through all her belongings for clues, but found nothing significant. Consequently, the search for the missing person continued. A day after her disappearance, there was still hope that the teenager was alive. However, the critical window for finding a missing person is 48 hours, after which the chances of a successful rescue decrease significantly. Therefore, the police needed to act quickly. During the investigation, the police focused on Johns, who lived just a few houses away from Carrie's family. John was 17 at the time and had developed a close relationship with Carrie. The police learned that he had a rebellious personality and a history of legal trouble, including convictions for petty theft and selling marijuana. Despite their 4-year age difference, John showed an interest in Carrie, which raised concerns. The police decided to investigate further and brought John in for questioning. John adamantly denied any involvement in Carrie's disappearance, claiming that he had not even seen her that day. The police were unable to gather any useful information during their questioning, and there was no solid evidence against John. As a result, he was released. The police then turned their attention to her stepfather, Frederick. In these cases, the perpetrator was often someone close to the victim, and cases involving stepfathers were not uncommon. which added to their interest in him. The police looked closely at her family, especially the relationship between Carrie and Frederick. They discovered that the two had recently been fighting, a change from their previous relationship. Frederick attributed the turmoil to Carrie's adolescence, believing that her hormones had made her more irritable and prone to anger over small matters. Despite this, he maintains that he would never harm her. An anonymous witness reported some details regarding her stepfather, Frederick. They mentioned that the day after Carrie went missing, Frederick poured a new concrete slab in the backyard. The witness suggested that this may have been Frederick's way of disposing of the body by burying it underneath the concrete slab. This information seems suspicious and should be investigated. The concrete slab was examined using ground-penetrating radar, and no suspicious voids were detected. When the area beneath the slab was excavated, it was found to be empty. The yard was well maintained, showing no signs of recent digging. The police decided to conduct a second round of questioning with the Carrie's friends, focusing on the possibility that she might have run away with a boyfriend. Although Carrie never mentioned having a boyfriend to her parents, the police speculated that she may have kept this relationship secret. However, her friends firmly denied this possibility, insisting that Carrie was not in a relationship with anyone. The police tried to collect evidence, but it is important to note that forensic science in the 1980s was not as advanced as it is today. At that time, there was no DNA testing, trackable cell phones, cameras, or GPS technology. This made finding evidence more difficult. As a result, the police could not find any clues. Carrie seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Lack of evidence then caused the case to stall. The police did not have a strong motive for Carrie's abduction, nor could they find a suspect. To raise public awareness of their daughter's disappearance, Carrie's parents turned to the media for help. They appealed to anyone with information about Carrie to come forward, but still, no leads came. The investigation was stalled due to lack of evidence. More than a year later, on September 2, 1983, a mysterious body was found in the John family home. The contractor was repairing the back porch. He leveled the ground and dug up a significant amount of dirt. While doing so, he noticed a foul odor coming from a pile of disturbed dirt. Upon inspection, he discovered human remains. The contractor immediately called the police. Everyone believed the remains to be those of Carrie. The body was then subjected to dental records analysis to determine the identity of the remains. All members of John's family were questioned. During his police interview, John denied any involvement and requested a lawyer. A year earlier, the police had lacked substantial evidence to charge or detain him, so they released him but continued to view him as a suspect. The remaining members of John's family have denied any involvement in the murder. The medical examiner investigated Carrie's cause of death and discovered severe injuries to her head and neck. She had significant internal bleeding, with lacerations on her left side. These injuries suggested that she had been attacked by someone else, leading to the case being classified as a homicide. Unfortunately, the autopsy was unable to provide enough information to determine whether rape had occurred. Carrie's body was found in her friend John's backyard, but this does not mean that he was responsible for her death or that he buried her there. Witnesses said that on the day she disappeared, there was a party at John's house. Police had to piece together the case from scratch, with few clues to follow. And so much time had passed since the party that it was difficult for those who were there to remember what happened. Several teenagers were interviewed about the party at John's house. Some claimed they were there but could not remember any details. Others said they had only heard about the party and were not actually there. John claimed he did not organize any events that day, and police found no evidence to contradict his statement. 4 days after Carrie's body was discovered, police received a new lead. A witness identified Jose Ferreira, a 16-year-old boy who lived next door to Carrie. He was seen in John's backyard when Carrie's body was discovered, which raised some suspicion. The police decided to pursue the lead and invited Jose to the police station for questioning. Jose denied any involvement in Carrie's death or disappearance. Jose knew her well and was friends with her, so he was very upset when he discovered her body in the backyard. He claimed that he did it to honor his old friend. Jose's story seemed credible. He was also questioned about a party at John's house on the day Carrie went missing, but he said it never happened. The police had no evidence against Jose, so they had to release him after questioning. Friends described Jose as friendly and cheerful, and no one believed he would hurt Carrie. They spent a lot of time together and were close friends. The investigation continued, but no leads were found. The case hit a dead end. It wasn't until 33 years after Carrie's murder that the investigation made any progress. On October 11, 2015, a man contacted a journalist to confess to the murder. His name was Jose Ferreira. In addition to contacting the journalist, he called the hotline and admitted to killing 13-year-old Carrie Ann Jopek years earlier. He also confessed to his wife about the crime. Journalists and switchboard operators were stunned by his confession and immediately notified the police. At the same time, Jose's wife learned of his crimes and went to the nearest police station to report him. Jose was 50 years old at the time. The police reviewed the case file. Despite Jose's confession, the police were in no hurry to arrest him. 2 days after his telephone confession, Jose turned himself into the police station and gave a detailed account of the events of 33 years ago. His sudden actions and confession were because he believed it would prevent his wife from getting a divorce. This statement puzzled the police. Jose said that on the day of the incident, Carrie returned home from school. She noticed a party going on at John's house. She wanted to avoid going home where she would face punishment, so she decided to join the party. At the party, she met Jose and they engaged in conversation. Then they went down to the basement together to find some wine. On the way down to the basement, he kissed her and she agreed. As they walked down the stairs to the basement, Carrie suddenly changed her mind and said she wanted to leave. In a fit of rage, he pushed her, causing her to lose her balance and fall down the stairs, resulting in a broken neck. In a moment of loss of control, he raped her, not knowing that she had died from the fall. His actions were classified as sexual assault and use of force. He defended himself by claiming that he had loved Carrie. He felt offended by her decision to leave, but he insisted that he did not want her to die. He panicked and dismissed the incident as an accident. Jose feared going to jail and ruining his life. He seized the opportunity during a lively party when no one noticed his presence in the basement. He needed to dispose of the body quickly to avoid being seen. Jose hid the body, and when night fell, he took a shovel and dragged Carrie into the backyard. In the dark, he quietly dug a hole and buried her. He believed that his plan had gone smoothly and that no one had seen him. However, the police were baffled by his story. They found it hard to believe that at such a crowded party, no one had noticed them together, and no one had noticed him digging the hole and burying Carrie. The police suspected that Jose might have had an accomplice, but he adamantly denied that anyone else was involved. Carrie's family said that Jose often visited them and was present at the farewell and burial. Carrie's mother remembered that Jose had mentioned being haunted by Carrie's ghost, which surprised them, but they ignored it at the time. While this could have been a warning sign, no one thought that the killer could be one of the friendly people in the neighborhood. Jose later revealed that Carrie's spirit had haunted him for years, making it impossible for him to live a normal life. This ultimately contributed to his decision to confess to the crime to ease his conscience. During the trial, the prosecutor asked for Jose to be convicted of second-degree murder. The defense argued that the case was manslaughter. Initially, bail was set at $200,000, but Jose then began to recant his confession. The prosecution's case relied heavily on Jose's confession. It would have been difficult to convince the jury of his guilt without any evidence. Ultimately, the prosecution offered a plea deal. In March 2017, Jose Ferreira agreed to plead guilty to sexually assaulting Carrie, which reduced his prison sentence to 7 years. The final sentence was handed down 35 years after Carrie was murdered. In 2022, Jose was released from prison and moved to the nearby town of Glendale, Wisconsin. He was listed in a police database as a potential sex offender and placed on supervision. Carrie's family expressed outrage that the man who murdered and raped a 13-year-old girl was released after only 7 years. He now lives a quiet life, as if nothing had happened, and as if he had not taken an innocent life. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Stay family. Family massacre cases always leave the public shocked and heartbroken, not only because of their brutality, but also due to the surprising nature of the tragedy occurring in places that seem the safest. Among the most shocking cases in the history of American justice is the Stay family case, a tragedy that claimed 6 innocent lives and exposed the dark side of domestic violence and human psychology. Through this heartbreaking story, the courage and resilience of Cassidy Stay, the sole survivor, shine as a glimmer of hope amid the darkness of tragedy. A teenage girl answered the door when someone knocked. She found a delivery man waiting outside and informed him that her parents were not home, asking him to return later. Later, the courier came back, but this time, the situation took a turn for the worse. The Stay family lived in that house. The father, 39-year-old Stephen Stay, and his wife, 33-year-old Katie Stay, they had 5 children: 15-year-old Cassidy, 13-year-old Brian, 9-year-old Emily, 7-year-old Rebecca, and 4-year-old Zach. They were a close-knit and happy family, well known among their neighbors for their Christmas parties and Halloween celebrations. The Stay family lived in a comfortable and safe neighborhood in Houston, Texas. Stephen had been working in real estate for many years and had just started his own small agency. Katie was a dedicated housewife who focused on taking care of their children and managing household tasks, always supporting her husband. On July 9, 2014, they visited their grandmother in the morning. Later that afternoon, after returning home, Katie and Stephen went to the bank, leaving their daughter Cassidy in charge of her younger siblings. A knock sounded at the door. Cassidy opened it and saw a courier from a delivery service holding a package. She informed him that her parents were not home. Cassidy didn't see the courier's face clearly, so she asked him to come back later and shut the door. After a while, the courier returned. When she opened the door again, she repeated that her parents were not home yet. This time, she looked closely at his face and recognized him. It was Ronald Lee Haskell, her Aunt Melanie Lyon's ex-husband, who was 33 years old. When Ronald saw that Cassidy recognized him, he told her he wanted to see Melanie. Cassidy replied that Melanie was not home. Worried, she tried to quickly close the door, but this made Ronald angry. He kicked the door hard, causing Cassidy to fall to the floor. He forced his way into the house and pulled out a gun. Instead of a package, he had a folded blanket, which he planned to use as a silencer. The children were terrified, clinging to each other and pleading with Ronald to leave, but he ignored their pleas. He held them hostage while waiting for Stephen and Katie to come back. When Katie returned from the bank and entered the house, Ronald confronted them with a weapon, demanding to know where Melanie was. They refused to answer because they knew he was dangerous. That was why Melanie had divorced him, and she was hiding. Ronald took their mobile phones and ordered them to lie face down on the floor. Realizing the danger, Katie jumped up and screamed, "No!" But then, he attacked her in the face and proceeded to target each family member on the floor, aiming for the back of their heads, including the children. Zach also was shot in the shoulder. The boy got up and ran to his father, who had already been shot. Ronald approached and callously attacked Zach in the head. When it was Cassidy's turn, the bullet unexpectedly ricocheted off her head without Ronald noticing. Seeing what had happened, she lay still and silent. Ronald, believing everyone was dead, decided to leave. He grabbed the keys to the Honda parked nearby and drove away with the Stay family's car. Once he was gone, Cassidy called 911. She informed them that Ronald had shot her entire family and that everyone was dead except for her and her brother, who she could hear struggling to breathe. The police and ambulance arrived at the scene to find a horrific sight inside the house. 6 individuals were lying on the floor, hands behind their heads, in a large pool of blood. At this time, all 6 were deceased. Cassidy was the only survivor. She suffered a minor head injury, received treatment, and fully recovered. She then moved in with her maternal grandparents and was able to share the details of the brutal murder. Cassidy informed the police that Ronald had been stalking her aunt, Melanie, and harassing the entire her family. She believed that Ronald had gone to her grandparents' house, where her aunt Melanie lived. Meanwhile, the police discovered that Ronald had fled the crime scene in the Stay family's Honda, which was now considered a wanted vehicle. It was urgent to locate this dangerous criminal before he could hurt anyone else. As the police headed to Melanie's house, they spotted the Honda. Ronald's driveway was blocked, and he stopped the car, but he refused to exit. Instead, he threatened to self-harm. Surrounding him were 50 police officers, all armed, demanding that he get out of the vehicle. In response, Ronald claimed to be struggling with mental health issues and insisted on speaking with his brother, who lived in California, stating that he did not want to go to prison. Negotiations lasted 3 hours until Ronald finally exited the car. He was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. As a result of the murders of the Stay family, the death penalty was being considered for Ronald, who remained in jail without bail after being released from the hospital. Cassidy, along with her grandfather and uncle, attended a family memorial event where 600 colorful balloons were released. She quoted her favorite Harry Potter book saying, "Happiness can be found even in the darkest times if only you remember to turn on the light." Cassidy expressed her belief that her parents, Brian, Emily, Rebecca, and Zach, were in a better place and that she would see them again one day. She also mentioned that she is staying strong during this challenging time. The police started investigating Ronald's background and found multiple charges of domestic violence made by his ex-wife, Melanie. He and Melanie were married in California in 2002 after having known each other since elementary school. They moved from their hometown to Utah, where Ronald deliberately cut Melanie off from her family. Problems arose almost immediately after their wedding, as he manipulated her into feeling unwanted by everyone, including her relatives. Throughout their marriage, Ronald subjected Melanie to physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. They had 4 children together, and he even assaulted Melanie during her pregnancies, eventually directing his violence towards the children as well. Ronald had a low income as a courier, which made it difficult to support their large family. Despite their financial struggles, he did not allow Melanie to work or leave the house, isolating her from anyone who could help. In 2008, Melanie seized a chance to contact the police when Ronald accidentally left his phone unattended after physically assaulting her. She was taken to the hospital, and Ronald received an 8-month suspended sentence. Unfortunately, this punishment did not stop him. The abuse started again as soon as she returned home. Ronald grew even more aggressive and threatened to kill her family if she reported him again, causing her to live in constant fear. By 2013, Melanie could no longer tolerate her situation. She and her children left their home while Ronald was at work and sought safety in a shelter. She filed for divorce and obtained a restraining order against Ronald. In need of support, she reached out to her sister, Katie. Despite not being very close, Katie felt compelled to help her sister and took Melanie and her 4 children to their parents' house in Houston, Texas, where they would be safe. Melanie's divorce from Ronald was finalized on February 14, 2014. They were granted joint custody of the children, with Melanie receiving primary custody. Ronald was ordered to pay $700 a month in alimony from his modest income. After the divorce, Ronald moved in with his parents in California. He was ordered to stay away from Melanie, her family, and the children's school. To evaluate his emotional stability and communication skills with the children, he was required to undergo a psychological examination, but he never succeeded. While living with his parents, Ronald began to take out his frustrations on them, physically abusing his elderly parents and older sister. In a disturbing incident, when he learned that his mother had been in contact with Melanie, he attacked her, bound her to a chair, and choked her until she lost consciousness. His sister eventually discovered their mother and called the police, but Ronald managed to avoid serious repercussions and continued the abuse towards his family. Ronald's family found it hard to understand why he had become so cruel, especially given that he was raised in a loving environment. In school, he was a popular football player, crowned prom king, and had many female friends. No one could believe that the friendly and cheerful Ronald would turn into a violent person. And in a moment of anger, Ronald sought revenge on his ex-wife. Tragically, he ended up killing his Stay's family instead. The police was discovered that Ronald did not own any registered firearms. He had stolen a pistol from his ex-girlfriend and bought over 200 rounds of ammunition from a weapons store. A ballistic test confirmed that the pistol found with him matched the bullets found at the murder scene. Additionally, notes outlining his murder plans were discovered in his notebook, showing that he originally intended to kill Melanie, her parents, and her sister as part of his revenge. It is clear that Ronald had planned this horrific act and intended to kill many people. If Cassidy had not quickly called 911 and the police had not intervened, Ronald would have killed Melanie, her parents, and possibly others. A memorial was set up in front of the deceased family's home, where neighbors and community members brought flowers to honor their memory. Melanie did feel guilty for her ex-husband's actions and found it difficult to understand why he chose to kill Katie and Katie's family instead of her. At this time, the court was significantly affected by damage caused by a storm, resulting in a delay in the trial. It wasn't until August 25, 2019, that the trial finally started, with Ronald facing the death penalty. Ronald fainted during the proceedings and had to be placed in a wheelchair. His lawyer claimed that he was scared and required a mental health assessment. A psychiatric evaluation revealed changes in his behavior, and he was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. The psychiatrist believed he was pretending to have a mental illness to evade responsibility for his actions. Ronald had previously been diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder while living with his parents and had attempted suicide 3 times without success. Ronald confessed to killing Stay's family, but said that voices in his head urged him to do it. He claimed he wasn't aware of his actions at the time. However, the prosecution presented CCTV footage showing Ronald at a hotel, a store, and a cinema before the murder. In the footage, he appeared calm and rational, which suggested he was not insane. The defendant's brother stated that Ronald was extremely angry with Katie, who aided Melanie and the children in their escape. He wanted to take revenge on her. Melanie corroborated this by saying he had been stalking her and had threatened to kill the entire her family. Notes found in his notebook indicated that he had been planning these actions for several months, showing that this was not a result of sudden insanity. In court, Cassidy also was the key witness against Ronald. She had grown up significantly and was a student at the University of Brick-Mayanka in Utah, where she was also engaged to her boyfriend. Cassidy recounted the terrifying experiences she had in the house during the murder and was shocked that Ronald showed no remorse for his actions. Throughout the 5 years he spent in prison awaiting trial, he did not reflect on his crime or feel any regret. Finally, Ronald was found guilty and sentenced to death by lethal injection. He is currently on death row waiting for his execution. The Stay family massacre is not only a tragic loss, but also a profound reminder of the impact of domestic violence and the dangers of leaving mental health issues untreated. Although the pain Cassidy Stay endured is immeasurable, she chose to use her loss as motivation to spread a message of courage and mental strength. The Stay family's story not only reminds us of the importance of protecting our loved ones, but it also inspires each person to feel a sense of responsibility to the community in preventing and resolving violence. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rosalia Jara. Rosalia Daniela Jara was born on September 12, 1997 in Fort Ole, a small town in the Vera department of Santa Fe, Argentina. She grew up in a close-knit family with limited means. Her mother, Liliana Jara, was the head of the family. Rosalia spent her childhood and adolescence in Fortin, where she attended primary school in a neighborhood called San Jose Obre. She aspired to become either a teacher or a police officer. She is known to be kind and thoughtful, especially to her family. When she was in 6th grade, she met Juan Oscar Valdez, a teacher, and they quickly secretly dated each other. At the time, she was only 13 years old, while Juan was 32 and married. Rosalia only shared this relationship with her sister, and her mother only found out when she became pregnant. After Rosalia gave birth to a daughter named Alma, Juan distanced himself and refused to acknowledge Alma's as his child. About a year later, Rosalia began living with a man named Aldo. There was a large age difference between them. This relationship did not go very well, and after another conflict, they decided to break up. On Saturday, July 1, 2017, Rosalia visited her mother Liliana, asking her to take care of her 2-year-old daughter, Alma. After that, Rosalia left home, taking very few belongings. Liliana assumed that Rosalia would be back soon, but that was not the case. That evening, Rosalia wears a red sports jacket, blue jeans, and new pink sneakers. Rumor has it that she went out to play cards with the US $20 she borrowed. She claimed she needed to make some money and wanted to try her luck. Around 9:00 p.m., Liliana called Rosalia, who said she was at a bar, enjoying the evening with friends while playing 5-card stud poker. She didn't mention anything concerning during their conversation, and this was the last time they spoke. Around 10:00 p.m., Rosalia was seen leaving a bar while talking on her cell phone and heading towards a checkpoint. After midnight, her mother, Liliana, tried repeatedly to reach her, but received no response. The following day, her mother went to the city police station to report her daughter, Rosalia, missing. Liliana found it unusual that she had not returned home, as Liliana knew how much her daughter valued family. However, the police were not interested in what Liliana said and refused to conduct a search. They argued that Rosalia, 19 years old, may have voluntarily left home. Days passed, and local authorities took no action to find Rosalia. A week after she went missing, local feminist groups organized a protest to pressure law enforcement. On the 11th day since she disappearance, authorities finally began search operations in Fort Ole and nearby areas. They conducted a careful search of the area and eventually discovered several items believed to belong to Rosalia. However, these findings did not help them find her. It is worth noting that after Rosalia went missing, most of the authorities' attention was focused on Juan. The police discovered that he left his home around 9 p.m. on July 1, driving a white Toyota Corolla, which partially matched the route Rosalia was believed to have taken. He returned home after 1 a.m. Witnesses near the bar reported seeing a similar white car with tinted windows around that time. Apparently, Juan was aware that the police suspected him of being involved in Rosalia's disappearance, which explains why he damaged his phone right before the authorities confiscated his phone. Rosalia's call history and phone location analysis revealed some important information, data related to Juan. On the night of her disappearance, there were about 20 calls between their two mobile numbers. most of which were initiated by Juan. Additionally, geolocation data from antenna signals indicated that Rosalia's and Juan's phones were close to each other at one point. Additionally, GPS data also showed that Juan's car was in the area during that time. Based on evidence and testimony from several witnesses, Juan was arrested in late July 2017. In early August 2017, the police organized a series of operations to clarify the chronology of incident related to Rosalia's disappearance. A representative of the Ministry of Security confirmed that during these operations, several searches took place simultaneously. One search took place at the local health department, while two others were organized at the homes of several police officers who were later suspected. The main goal of the search at the medical center was to find evidence suggesting that Rosalia may have had an abortion shortly before she went missing. However, this hypothesis was dismissed. Meanwhile, the search for Rosalia, the missing girl, continued. The main suspect, Juan, refused to testify about his relationship with her and about the many calls he made on the day she was last seen. In April 2018, during a hearing in the city of Vera, the judge rejected a request from Juan's lawyer to allow him to remain free. The judge decided that he should remain in custody indefinitely, as there was still a risk that he could influence witnesses. However, Juan's lawyer stated that the prosecution lacked evidence to link he to the crime. The lawyer emphasized that he had been cooperating with authorities from the start. The lawyer also dismissed the prosecution's claim that Juan intentionally damaged his phone to destroy evidence. On August 26, 2018, two hunters discovered human remains near a stream in the city of Londrina. The remains included a skull and several bone fragments. Alongside these, a pink sports jacket, sneakers, and other personal items believed to belong to the victim were found. Rosalia's family identified most of these items. The remains were sent to the Institute of Forensic Medicine for anthropological analysis. Police then went to the home of Aldo, Rosalia's ex-boyfriend, where she had lived prior to her disappearance. With Aldo's permission, they searched the house for a lock that matched a key found in the sports jacket's pocket. However, Aldo explained that he had to break the front door locks because he had not lived there for a long time and didn't know where his keys were. On September 8, 2018, investigative police officers conducted several procedures related to this case. The first procedure took place at the Municipal Health Service Department, where blood samples were taken from Liliana and her granddaughter Alma. The aim is to determine whether their DNA matches that of the remains that have been found. The Argentine Institute of Forensic Medicine confirmed that the remains found belonged to Rosalia, with a nearly 100% probability. Although forensic experts were unable to determine the cause of her death, it was clear that she had been murdered by violence, as evidenced by severe injuries to her left cheekbone, which had destroyed her skull. For Gustavo Monzon, the prosecutor in charge of the case, the evidence collected became a crucial step in the investigation. After completing all procedures, Rosalia's remains were returned to her family for burial. After it was confirmed that she had died from physical abuse, the State Attorney General's office decided to change the crime classification to homicide. More than a year and a half after her disappearance, the case finally moved to the public trial stage. In 2018, Juan Valdez was charged with Rosalia's murder. His lawyer has objected to this, arguing that the actual reasons for Rosalia's death were not determined. After hearing this, the court ordered the exhumation of her remains for further examination. Several months later, the original judge was dismissed due to allegations of bias against Juan. On July 2, 2019, the new judge began reviewing the case and denied Juan's attorney's request to revoke the pretrial detention order. Local media have been regularly reporting on key points in the investigation. In particular, Attorney General Gustavo Monzon has suggested that Juan killed Rosalia simply because she asked for child support for Alma, whom Juan acknowledged as his child. Gustavo claimed that just a day before Rosalia's disappearance, she had called Juan to voice her frustrations about his refusal to help with child support. Returning to the trial, it is important to clarify the prosecution's main hypothesis. On Saturday, July 1, 2017, while Juan's wife was away, he contacted Rosalia to discuss their meeting. As previously mentioned, he and she had multiple phone calls that day, with the last call initiated by Juan. This call lasted no more than 30 seconds, but it was enough for he to specify the exact time and place for their meeting. It is believed that when he met she, he used force to make her get into his car and turned off her mobile phone. From that moment on, her phone no longer had a signal. According to the timeline created by the prosecutors, Juan drove towards the municipality of Landry. At some point during the drive, he allegedly struck Rosalia on the head, leading to her death. He then drove a few more kilometers to a stream to dispose of her body. During the hearing, the prosecutor presented all the evidence related to the case. In addition to the report from the experts of the Institute of Forensic Medicine, the prosecution had witness testimony, autopsy reports, DNA analysis results, and forensic reports. The case documents include information from telephone company, such as call records, text messages, and geolocation information. This information fully corroborates the main version of the prosecution. Additionally, the prosecutor's team had testimony from Juan's 20-year-old stepdaughter, Macarena. She said that Juan left home around 9 p.m. that night, and she did not see him return. This contradicts Juan's testimony, which states that on the day of the incident, he went to bed early and did not leave the house. Another piece of indirect evidence presented by the prosecution was related to Juan's inappropriate behavior towards teenage girls. This evidence was based on the testimony of a female student. She reported that he had subjected her to indecent acts when she was just 12 years old. Additionally, there was other evidence that Juan had problems at the school, where he occasionally taught, all related to his relationships with minors. In November 2019, Rosalia's family changed their lawyer. By March 2020, their new lawyer, Caroline Walker, stated that after reviewing the case documents, she discovered that the investigation had overlooked several important elements. Curiously, Juan was not prosecuted for sexually assaulting Rosalia, even though their romantic relationship started long before she turned 18. Caroline also realized that as she gathered evidence against Juan, he was clearly a dangerous predator. For this reason, she did not rule out the possibility of future cases related to these crimes. The main trial took place at the Vera Municipal Court on Tuesday, July 7, 2020. This was 3 years after the disappearance and 2 years after the discovery of Rosalia's remains. Only the main representatives of the parties attended the trial. Other members, journalists, and many experts were in other rooms of the court. Given the case's significance and the announced restrictions, various feminist groups supporting Rosalia's family requested authorities to broadcast the trial daily. In his opening speech, Prosecutor Gustavo stated that he would seek a life sentence for Juan. There were several reasons for this decision, the most important of which was that Rosalia had been in an unequal relationship with him. Juan not only controlled her, but also dominated her in social relationships. Furthermore, he has consistently failed to acknowledge their common child, Alma. Therefore, the punishment Gustavo proposed, that is, life imprisonment, was entirely appropriate to the extent of the damage Juan had caused to all members of Rosalia's family. Caroline Walker, the lawyer representing Rosalia's family, criticized the authorities for their initial response when Rosalia was reported missing. She noted that the authorities were initially not proactive in searching for Rosalia and did not take the case seriously. Additionally, she stressed that Rosalia's remains were not discovered by law enforcement officers, but were found by 2 hunters. She also said that in her opinion, a police officer informed Juan about the investigation. This led to some important information being leaked, which could have helped him disappear just before his arrest. The trial lasted about a month and featured around 100 expert testimonies. Details of the phone calls between Rosalia and Juan on the day of her disappearance were also presented. It was revealed that he made the last call shortly after she left the bar, and her phone was turned off soon after. Several witnesses reported seeing a similar white car near the bar that evening. Juan was also seen leaving the house around 9:00 p.m., and a while later he came back. Prosecutors argued that this brief time frame was sufficient for him to commit the crime and dispose of the evidence. Additionally, another important piece of evidence was geolocation data from the phones, which showed that Juan and Rosalia's phones were in close proximity for a period of time. The prosecution delivered a strong closing argument, presenting both direct and indirect evidence that confirmed Juan Valdez's guilt in the crime. They firmly believed that Rosalia's life was ended due to a violent act by he, although the exact cause of death was not determined. But forensic experts believed that she could have died from a severe blow to the left cheekbone. Juan also had the opportunity to defend himself. He attempted to dispute all the evidence presented by the authorities, particularly denying allegations that he intentionally damaged his mobile phone. Furthermore, Juan argued that the authorities had made a serious mistake by focusing on him, which had led to a failure to identify who had actually harmed Rosalia. On August 3, 2020, the much-awaited verdict was announced. The court found Juan Oscar Valdez guilty on all charges. He listened to his sentence with his eyes downcast. Outside the courtroom, many young people from various human rights organizations had gathered to show support for Rosalia's family and to follow the trial's progress. Shortly after the guilty verdict, Juan's lawyer filed an appeal against the trial court's decision. During the appeal, Juan's lawyer argued that the prosecution had not presented clear evidence to prove that Rosalia had actually gotten into Juan's car on the day she disappeared. Additionally, the lawyer also argued that Aldo, her last boyfriend, whom she had accused of sexual assault, was the one people should suspect. The defense also stressed that the fact that Juan had a daughter with Rosalia did not prove that he had a motive to commit a serious crime. The prosecution aimed to counter the arguments made by Juan's lawyer. They said that from the beginning of the investigation, they considered many theories, but all were discarded when the evidence pointed to Juan as the perpetrator. Caroline Walker, the lawyer representing Rosalia's family, agreed with the prosecution's position. On October 7, 2021, the Vera Court of Appeals issued a unanimous 3-judge decision. They did not accept the appeal and request to overturn the sentence that Juan's lawyer had filed. Therefore, the previous judgment of the trial court, according to which Juan was sentenced to life in prison, remained in place. In addition, the prosecutor's office was asked to conduct an internal investigation into the misconduct of some of the police officers involved. Rosalia's case became a symbol of solidarity and feminist movements in the northern province of Santa Fe. It highlighted the issue of gender violence in local media and sparked discussions during political debates. Although Rosalia's family achieved justice, it did not erase their pain.